You go. Hello and welcome to something that we've actually never done before on this channel before. It's kind of like a podcast style, like State of the Realm, Frosty's Mog Talk. Kind of spontaneous, so sorry for any kind of issues that pop up at any point in the stream. Today we're going to be doing a healer interview with Narrlocke, MomoHime, Tulslaeh, Kiona, and Ara. And you may remember some of these names because some of them are pretty popular in the community. And also Mr. Happy, of course, my co-host.
I just love that the intro screen said healer interview with Mr. Happy, as if I'm some expert on the topic.
Hey, listen, you're just here, okay? You're here. You're gonna carry me. My first time ever doing this.
I'm the ninth man equivalent of this podcast. I'm here to watch and like supervise and like make graphs and stuff.
I guess we'll go over the introductions though. Starting from Narrlocke, and I'm just going clockwise, I guess, through MomoHime and then us or Tuls. Sorry.
Oh, am I supposed to introduce myself?
Yeah, introduce yourself. Yeah.
I'm Narrlocke, and I'm gay.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah.
Okay, you're done? Okay.
Try to follow that up. I'm MomoHime. I play Scholar in Ether Group 3. I like Blue Mage a lot. That's about all I got. You go, Tulls.
Hello, I am Tulls of Aether Group 3. I played and progged as Astro. I've been a career paladin for like the past 2 expansions, and I've literally only healed the start of the Endwalker. So, hi.
It's gonna be good because I think you and Narrlocke, right, have the least experience, so it's gonna be good hearing from that.
No, that would be me.
Okay. Outside of you, Mr. Happy. All right, Kyo, go.
Hi, I'm Kiona Linaire on TPS. I played Scholar this prog tier. Yeah.
And finally, Ara.
Hey, I'm Ara, and I played Astro this tier, and I played for Team TPS.
All right. I guess starting off, how was it? How was healing it?
It's something you're always worried about getting one shot with something that just happens.
Yeah, that was pretty common.
And to be fair, I'm not on healer, and I'm afraid of that. So I fully understand that as a poor little bard, at the very least.
Especially going from that massive time gap from 5.1 to 6.1 with like the extended tier in the middle as well, with no ultimates. You have like 3 whole savage tiers where when you're at the minimum gear level, all you need to survive most things is just like a shield and a cooldown. And then you get hit with this fight where you need like a deploy with 8 healing buffs and 3 more cooldowns just to live a basic raid wide. It's a little much.
Even in T, it was kind of similar, right? Like, Almighty Judgment needed like 20 or 30% plus shields, and then even the Wormhole stack only needed like 10% plus shields, so...
Yeah, but just after 2.5 years of like fat gear T,
yeah,
kind of like didn't, got out of the habit of actually being threatened by something.
Yeah, it was a wake-up call to be sure. Like, after so much time of being used to like throughput healing, or mostly throughput damage, I guess, MP management, cooldown management that was pretty lax, and outgearing everything, suddenly it was all about mit checks, timing, CDs, and really throughput didn't really play a factor, which was weird. Like, it was weird, but it's like it's the ultimate standard. So we just forgot. It's been so many years.
Yeah.
There was some sections like the last phase and the Horshapon phase where throughput mattered a little, but not too much. But it really reminded me back to like Golden Bahamut, where like if one person missed a 10%, you're just dead. Like you gotta hit your button.
Yeah, even in those phases where throughput mattered, it was still more of a mit check. Because like having more mit or having a better mit mapping just makes it easier to heal anyway.
I was looking back over our footage for stuff like the Aquamarine puddles in P6, and it's like, even though you might consider that a throughput check because it's like rapid hits, it's like, really, what can you do if the mit's not there? You just kind of get 2 shot. So it's mit check.
The thing about all the throughput checks in that fight is that since it's not consistent, like on a consistent basis every like 30 seconds or so, since they're so spaced out and all the heavy throughput sections are preceded or succeeded by parts where you like don't have to heal at all, it basically just turns into a spam all your cooldowns at once check.
Actually, I think the ultimate end into the Nidhogg was probably the best one, right? I was like back to back.
Ultimate end into final chorus into the 2 party stacks is like the hardest. It's like one of the hardest parts to mitigate just because they're all back to back.
Yeah.
Like you
Now,
can't
that
put
might
like
be-
soil on
oh,
every
sorry.
single one. Like you can't put soil on all 4 of those, for example, or maybe you could, but it was tight. Yeah. That's
Now,
all.
there's a lot of opinions about, you know, it being the first time in a couple of years that you've actually had to do most of this, but you still seem pretty relaxed about the actual healing. So despite being, I guess, kind of out of season with this, was it easy? Was it hard? Did you feel either way about it? And what healer you played to make you feel that way, I suppose?
I'd wager Ara has a lot to say about this.
There was like a video that I think Sheena made for Momo that kind of sums it up. If you're the shield healer, you're just stressing out. The regen healer kind of has it a lot easier this tier, I think.
Oh, you saw that. It was it was White Mage was like I'd have to find the video. It's really hard to describe, but yeah, that did you guys have any issues with like because damage variance is +5 -5 if I can remember correctly, and with some of these AoEs hitting so hard, did you guys ever have like any inconsistencies with mitigation, or did you always do like an extra 10% or something to compensate, just to make sure like nothing bad happened?
I mean, for ours, it was like you can pretty easily eyeball when you're within damage variance of wiping,
Mm-hmm.
and then you if you see that once, you're just like, okay, we need a little bit more somewhere somehow.
Yeah, I think the biggest offender would definitely be the final phase transition with the damage variance there. That one.
I guess it's going to definitely vary per group. Like we planned exactly what we wanted the first time we were going. Like first time we hit it, we did something. We looked at what we did and we just kept doing it. So in our case, there wasn't really much looking at damage variance.
Okay.
But I'm sure others did.
Yeah. Did you guys know how much mitigation to use like right away, or did you guys just kind of maybe overcompensate a little bit there?
No,
the final phase?
we weren't looking at anything. We were just kind of. You mean for the transition, right?
Yeah, like how you need like I think it's like 6-10% plus shields or 5-10% plus deploy.
I think my group was one of the only ones that actually didn't instantly die the first time we got there. And that's just because everyone was in the habit of as soon as we see something new, everyone just spams all their cooldowns because like seeing 2 mechanics and then dying is better than seeing 1 mechanic and then dying. You know?
I think the bleeds would like bait people into using theirs if you're seeing it for the first time. The 2
for
like,
sure.
raid by. So we definitely died. Everyone except for the tanks and the deploy target.
I think we had 2 deaths on our first time seeing the transition. I was actually really happy that we didn't instantly wipe to it, but we did have 2 people die because the mate wasn't 100%. But I think that's because the bleed stripped a little bit of my shield.
That's actually a good point though about the bleeds. Yeah, like they kind of bait you into using your mitigation. Because I'm pretty sure the first time we got there too was like somebody accidentally pressed their, I think it was Sambla or something was pressed, and yeah, we didn't have it for the transition, so they had to like compensate.
It's definitely like
Plead the fifth.
everyone who has like mitigation up used it, but you don't know when it's coming if you're there the first time.
It's a very long transition. Very, very long.
Once you see it start charging up, you're like, okay, this is definitely it, but you don't know.
He's doing something. Look out. Do it. Press the buttons. And then he like starts like flexing for like 25 seconds, bleeds a little bit.
Yeah, like yes.
Just a funny laugh without like any audio.
I found the clip. 3 of us died on the first transition. Both healers and Sphia.
Yeah, that first transition.
All the casters.
Fucking caster curse. Yeah, I have extra match resist though.
I guess before we get...
I mean, MT lived. He was caster.
Oh.
What did he play? He played Summoner or Red Mage?
Red Mage.
Oh, okay. So he didn't have the Summoner Shield. I guess
Most important person.
We did have Magic Barrier though.
That's the damage variance. We're back on that topic.
Yeah, it always back. Yeah, I think that was a concern for sure. Just because I mean that last. I mean, if it's +5 -5, like sometimes, you know, one person's taking almost 10% more, 10% less than somebody else. So it's like, that's huge.
I think it's that. I think for a lot of groups that never comes up because if you're taking so much damage from a mechanic that you're dropping so low that one person forgetting one cooldown becomes an instant wipe, then that's a problem, right? You always want like one extra so that you don't die instantly if someone forgets.
Yeah.
So that kind of ends up not usually being a thing because you usually have one extra cooldown.
I think Scholar also kind of prevents that from happening. Usually anyway, just because
plus
deploy is so strong.
Yeah, dude, deploy's so good.
I guess before we just get too off topic with talking about final phase, which parts of the fight gave you the most challenge, if any?
For healing specifically, or
just whatever you thought gave you the most challenge? Shielding, mitigation, pure healing. It's probably going to vary depending on what healer you were.
I think Dragon's phase was probably the biggest struggle for us in terms of healing.
Just tank damage or combination of both, like Akmorn?
It was mostly tank damage, but I mean we struggled a little bit with the Akmorns too. Just initially, like the mapping was a little weird. Trying to time the expedience so it falls off before we're marching the puddles forward, so we don't have weird like overstretched puddles. So I can get that timing right, and then the mid.
So I think I'm gonna end up like dipping into a question that's later on the list. Sorry, but I kind of agree with dragons. There's like the vow. I don't know if you guys passed the vow ever to like the tanks or only the DPS. But we kept it all on DPS, and there's like the Akafa stacks and the Akmorn, where it's like you have to give the vow a little bit of love. Like usually your healer mit or soul admiral dome or whatever, they just will probably die or lose a tick of shield or whatever.
Yeah, you should throw like a C either way or
yeah, the
exaltation.
CI.
It's just hard to remember that if you're like progging the phase, because that phase is very like high nerves for sure when you're progging through it.
Yes, and before this, so it goes back to the thing of like how long it's been since we've had a healing challenge that like uses every tool so hard. It's like easy to forget to use CI as a tool because not much actually required it. As like awful as I just say, like you used it for recovery or for like weird situations where someone didn't have something extra. And it felt like you were tested on like actively using it for busters every time instead.
Yeah, that was actually a thing too. Now that you mentioned that, I think we also had to actually specifically use Aqua Veil for some of the busters, or else the tank would actually die.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, like you said, I don't think that's ever actually been a thing almost anywhere. Like you've never been required to like kind of use your single target mit there.
Yeah, you mentioned using Aqua Veil for busters. I really love protraction in the fight too. Just anything that's like a tank mit or you can throw on someone. It's way better than Sage's version, which is what Crossus, where it doesn't have the HP
Min
buff.
2.
I only got thrown off by the incentive to use it on deploys, and then you don't use it on the tank busters because you're trying to swoop up the deploys.
Yeah, you can mix it up.
Yeah. I mean, that was interesting decision points for sure.
Use it on both situations.
Well, if mentioning Aqua Veil, been talking a lot about the not regen healers pretty much the whole time, and I think it's probably deliberate because regen healing in this fight is well, it's a topic all on its own. So, did anyone play a regen healer in the tier itself?
Here, as in
as in ultimate, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did anyone play a regen healer here during prog?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How was that? Because having some experience being just a plain DPS with a white mage sage combination, I was so frightened for my life every time. And you just have to sit there and kind of let it happen and react to it. So how was that being on a regen healer?
I had bubble.
Yeah, exactly. I have bubble. I have neutral sect. You can do a lot of finagling with neutral sect because you can really space out the timings of the shields. That really is very helpful. But besides that, you just have the bubble, which sounds really good. It's like basically another soil on a 60-second cooldown. except for the fact that you can't use it on a lot of the mechanics because you can't consistently be stacked, and if you can't do it every time, then it's basically useless.
Yeah. Astro definitely had a little extra tricks they could use to help, at least with the mid checks. But yeah, once those are down, as regen healer, you're kind of just praying. Like you're topping and praying that you don't get one shot.
Even as the regen healer, your contribution comes back to what you can mitigate, mostly. And then you press star every 60 seconds.
Sounds like White Mage Temperance then becomes a very, very careful tool if you have to not do this on Astro.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta really be careful where you put Temperance.
Yeah, Temperance, I mean, Temperance is good. It's one of those tools where it's definitely underrated because it's your only mitigation tool. And obviously Astro has too. But the good thing about Temperance is that if you can get the full duration off, the value just skyrockets. And that kind of shows more in the last phase than any other phase. Because I'm pretty sure CU can last for most of the Akmorn. It's probably good in the rewind phase too, where you're saving Harsh Font, but I mean, I think the big thing is on top of the mitigation, you're also increasing your healing power, which is another very strong tool. And coupled with like Plenary Rapture spam or just Cure 3 spam, can be like that's a lot of utility you're getting there.
I gotta say, it feels really good to get the Benediction Harsh Font and just fills all health bar up.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that because a lot of people were like, "Oh, you can't do that," but then like, I don't know how that rumor started.
It's because you can't do like almost anything else. You can only use because he's not a party member, so you can only use the stuff on him that you can use on like randos and Limsa, right? Which is Tetra and Benny and like a couple GCDs, and that's it.
Right,
I'm sure that rumor started because of the pre debuff thing where you try to Benny him and it wouldn't work. It would do 0 because he was fully immune.
This came up too when we were trying to prog the rewind phase. The TBN doesn't actually specify party members. I'm pretty sure. I think it says you were target, but like you can only use it on party members anyway. And there was like a clip of someone else trying it. They target Harshfont, hit the button, and the button goes off, but they don't. And like this info spreads that you can TBN Harshfont, but it actually just went on themselves. So.
Gotta love week 1 ultimate misinformation. Gotta love it.
So we talked about the pure. Is there any other part of the fight that pure healers struggled with at all? Actually, I guess a good question is, did you guys designate responsibilities with tank busters? Because I know with tank busters, and at least in my group, our white mage mostly does most of the healing there, just because their toolkit's a little bit more efficient for that. Like I give an X-Cog and that's probably about it.
I know I do a lot of double regenning during ads and final phase. That is probably unnecessary, but I think it does a lot.
Makes it comfy. Comfortability is sometimes necessary.
Yeah. CD mapping in Dragons was really difficult, so I don't know. I know that I was pumping Adlos into every single buster for a while.
Me too.
To make sure that it was safe. Yeah, I still do. Just to make sure it's safe. It's not needed if CDs are mapped properly, but I don't want to throw away like a 15-minute pull.
Yeah, I think I'll just give like each tank a sucker there and pray for the best. I guess when I was saying that, I was more referring to like maybe like the Thornton busters more than anything. Or I guess like the double autos and final phase.
At least with me and Rami, it was less of a like efficiency thing and more of like, since we're trying to prog fast, is more of just a splitting brain power thing, where it's like, it's my job to fill the HP bars. If the HP bars aren't full, it's my fault. If something goes wrong, you don't have to worry about it. You just do what you can, right? Just because it's less time mapping and planning around things that don't really matter that much as long as you're like killing the phase. So at least for us, it was, as long as the tank doesn't get one shot by Heavenly Heal, then you just like throw whatever you have available for the cleaves, and then it's my job to fill his HP bar, right? So
yeah,
I don't have anything else to think about. I don't have any mitigation, so you think about that, and I'll worry about this.
Yeah, for the Ascalon Mites, I would just like throw up Sinistry and just heal bomb it. And if it looked like he was barely getting scratched, I was like, okay, I'll go back to Malefacing. You
Yeah,
never know.
exactly.
Sometimes the CD just gets missed. It happens, and the tank is just getting absolutely trucked. And it's like, okay, well, I'm glad I started precasting because I just saved his life.
Yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
I did that a lot in the Thornton 2 one specifically. Because that was the. I feel like tanks have to play tighter with their CDs on that phase going into Dragons. I don't know exactly what it's like. I just remember that was like the scariest for them, so I did a lot of benefits.
Oh yeah, our group did that too, where when we were progging Dragon's phase, we were like, well, this tank damage is actually kind of serious. Like our tanks are having trouble rationing their cooldowns in that phase. Like it's hard to line stuff up. So he said, all right, just do nothing for the heavenly heal before the dragons, and the healers will just carry you through it. And they kept arguing, like, well, should we have this? Like, oh, I don't know about that. And we're just like, it's fine. Like, we can just press cure 2. It's all right. It doesn't matter. We don't need 2 glares.
Very same with us, and I would just spam an Adlo on the tank taking the cleave for third and 2 busters.
Exactly. Like if your healers are just pre-casting and correctly, and they're both just, you know, like casting heals and like weaving off GCD in between each one, like you can heal a lot of damage if you're specifically trying to do it. It's pretty insane.
Nice that phase does not have like a DPS check, and it is just free to do that.
Yeah,
Not
and it
to, like-
sets you up for the next phase. For
Not
sure.
to like downplay like optimizing damage, because you know you have a couple deaths in Death of the Heavens or something, and you might barely make it, but you know, for the most part,
Exactly.
you're free to
It's
just
It's just
heal.
one of those things where it's like, sure, you could efficiently like map out your cooldowns and stuff, and you know, for most groups, that's what they're gonna do, so that they don't have to do that kind of stuff. But it's also like we could just be finished with this phase and move on if I just cast Cure 2 twice. So let's just do that and get out of here. You know,
Yeah.
we don't have to plan all this stuff.
Yes. Speaking about busters, how did you guys feel about busters as a healer in this fight? Because I know in T, after BJCC, they're kind of a bit lackluster. Because I mean, you would just either invuln you would either invuln 1 and 2 in Alexander, or the first and second tank buster in Alexander. Then you would also invuln either the second or third, or you know, whatever you did in Perfect, and you only had to really mitigate 1 in early prog, unless you had like really fast kill times, which I don't think most groups did. Or I guess you had like a Paladin Gunbreaker comp. So your invulns were, I guess, more accessible in T, whereas in this one, it feels like you don't really invuln any buster at all outside, because you need it for the cauterize, or at least, you know, most people need it for the cauterize, and most groups use it during the first trio and normal Thornton. So, how did you guys feel about that?
I felt like there's a little. It was interesting figuring out, not in our prog, but afterward, that you could just not invuln those busters in Thornton. Make that phase a tiny bit tighter on movement, right, to cross the tethers and pop cooldowns, and then have the option of invulning stuff like the Nidhogg 4 towers. That was very interesting, because that's also a very CD intensive tank buster. And being able to invuln 1 and then throw all the healer mitt and stuff on the other tank is very cool. Something we didn't do in prog, but it's definitely interesting that you could do that flexing.
We actually didn't have a tank cross, and we still had one that would not invuln, save their invuln for the tether and Nidhogg.
It's
It
pretty
wasn't too hard to heal. You get like a free GCD where you're sitting there in the tower, kind of just waiting. We just kind of heal them through the like LB that the knights do.
Yeah, I know for our tanks that when we got there in Prague, it was largely because they looked at mitigating that and then mitigating the heal and the cleaves afterwards, and they said, "All right, we'll just invuln this, and then we'll worry about the heal later." But then when they get the Nidhogg, it's like 5 OGCDs they have to use to make sure they live, and sometimes even then they were still asking for an Adlo. So I think that one's a lot more threatening, and I think a lot more groups are moving towards that. Also lets the tank movement be kind of sporadic during Nidhogg. They can just stand wherever as long as they're not on top of anyone else.
Well,
Definitely
especially.
feel,
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Kia.
Well, especially because it's a 2-minute burst window. And
Mhm.
Dark Knights are like, you want me to pop every defensive and every offensive in this one tiny section? Can I just LD?
That rings familiar to me.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I don't know how they do that. Our tanks never complained about it, and I knew the whole time what they were doing. I can't believe they never complained about this. This Dark Knight's popping like 8 defensives and then like 10 offensives, and he's looking at the towers and he's trying to find the tether, and you take the tether off of these assholes that are standing right under the clone. Like,
Yeah, I think what ours had to do is they would call a time to start popping them so they could pop the longer defensives that would still be up for the tethers after the tower, and then closer to the tether going off after they'd done some of their burst, that's when they'd fit in the rest of them that were like TPNs or, you know, like the short duration ones for any of the other tanks. So it's like a sandwich of defensives with all the offensives somewhere in between.
Yeah, like I said before, the amount of tank cooldowns needed for some of the busters definitely made stuff like protraction feel much more value using them on the tank than simply saving for a deploy every time.
Yeah.
The busters were really well designed this tier. Like, made us utilize pretty much all of our toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
Really like it when it was like that, especially just feeling like we might die if people miss stuff. I don't know, it just made it really satisfying to just prog and go through.
I guess, I mean, you talk about all this mitigation and like, you know, it's all mitigate. Do you guys feel like there was not enough actual healing in the fight? Like, let's, you know, Living Liquid, for example, had a lot of, you know, healing checks that required raw healing more than like mitigation. Same with BJCC2 to an extent with the tank auto attacks and like tank damage. But do you guys feel like, you know, at some point we needed more of that and less mitigation, or do you guys like the formula in this fight more?
I was thinking about this earlier. How so during a lot of the parts of the fight, like the meteors and sanctity of the word and dive from grace on Nidhogg, there are a lot of parts in the fight where the party is actually like rapidly taking damage throughout the mechanic. But at some point, I think this might be something they changed last minute, but like the party's rapidly taking damage throughout the mechanic, but they're only taking like 5k damage, like just a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they could have easily just made that a bigger amount, and they would suddenly be like a more rapid healing throughout the phase. But since they only take like a little bit of damage, you just ignore it and like do like one regen and they're good, right?
Yeah.
I like the conviction towers too. When you resolve them correctly, they do like 5k, barely anything.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah,
they could
you're
have easily
right.
made that do more. And the spine shatter dives and the elusive jumps and stuff, those also barely do anything.
Yeah, the only part that does damage more is literally the stack.
Do you guys think there should be more pure healing? Is what I'm hearing?
It could be.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
I
Because
think
it's
there
like,
should be.
Yeah.
it's like what Narrlocke said, like there's just big damage and then there's downtime, and then there's big damage and then there's downtime. So you never really feel threatened.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
feel
there's,
just worried you're gonna get one shot. That's all. You're not
there's,
threatened to like running out of MP or anything.
Exactly. Like if all the healing sections, like the Akmorns and stuff, if all those sections are spread out to the point where all your cooldowns come back up between every one, then it's not a healing check. You just have to press all your cooldowns, right? Like every
Yeah.
time. It only becomes difficult when you can't just press everything that lights up on your hotbar for it because it's too often, right? That's kind of like what makes that section that we were talking about earlier with the ultimate end into the final chorus into the stacks. That's what makes that section hard, is you don't just get all your cooldowns back every time.
most of the trios, when you're going through them, as long as you have like a full health bar and shields going into them, they pretty much don't have to heal through anything. It's one of the reasons Scholar is kind of good, I think. If you deploy before some of them, you don't have to, or you might otherwise have to. Kind of like the plunges that the Dragoon does during Sanctity. They can hit pretty hard, but if you just go with a large enough shield, you can get through the whole thing without needing anything.
Yeah, exactly. Sanctity of the Ward with the Dark Knight part, and Wrath of the Heavens, the first trio, and alternate Thornton. Those are both actually mechanics where where by design you do need to heal halfway through them, right? But the thing is that, like I said earlier, since it's so far divorced from anything else in the fight that requires a cooldown, you can just spam neutral sect in the fattest deploy you can for both of them, and with like no consequence, and then you don't have to heal it, right? Because you have a shield the size of your health bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
think it's definitely one of the advantages of Scholar. When it comes to this fight specifically, is it just lets you cheese lock a lot of mechanics. Like I mean, even in early prog, like learning how to heal Sanctity, right? For the Dark Knight, you didn't have to. Protraction, Recitation, Adela Deploy, plus Constellation in between hits. I mean, you're pretty much done at that point. That's very strong there. Because, so, Pure Healing obviously is a little bit lackluster in this fight. Do you think that's because it was designed with maybe Shadowbringer's toolkits in mind, and then, like, they didn't really bump it up to meet the standards, or...
I think that's very possible.
I mean, in Shadowbringers, healers still kind of had like a lot of off GCDs, right?
Yeah. Their
I mean,
GCD power was slightly lower, but
they just keep getting slightly like more, but they still had a lot by that point in time. So I'm not really sure, but I think it was. I just thought it was strange how many things in the fight, how many parts in the fight where there's like a lot of hits going on the party, but they all just do like 1k damage. I thought it was just weird. It felt like something that maybe was changed at the last minute.
mm-hmm.
I think it's part of the design. The fight's so random in terms of who can be assigned what. There's very little rhyme or reason as to who's going to be targeted by what and when and where you might need to stand and where you might need to move. I think it is just literally down to they calculate it as if, okay, anyone can be targeted, so we can't really force too much in certain spots here because there's going to be too much of a job differential, whether or not you have Mitt that travels with you like Sage or have to be standing in a bubble like a Soil or something like that. I think that design runs true for a lot of this. The DPS checks too seem as if they're designed as if you got all the worst patterns, you wouldn't struggle with it, regardless of your comp. And I think that's just true for the healing also.
It's yeah, I mean that's true. Because I mean some of the hardest you guys would agree that some of the hardest healing mechanics in this game are ones that aren't consistent damage or target people at different times, like Final Omega's Hello World, or you live in liquid phase with like tornadoes hitting different people and sluices and or Prenny waves and stuff. So maybe they thought it'd be too difficult.
Yeah. Anything where you're like resolving a mechanic and you also have to focus on healing.
Curtain call?
Not really a mechanic.
Yeah, that's a bit.
I mean,
Party Finder definitely thinks it is.
To an extent, like if you think about like the first couple times you were there, yeah, it's a mechanic. It's mostly attributed to the fact that it's late in the fight, so you don't see it that much. You don't get to build comfort. But
yeah,
I don't know.
True.
There's not a whole lot going on. You're just snapping a tether and you're standing still.
Yeah, I wouldn't really compare it to Final Omega as Hello World, where you're kind of having to pay attention to who is actually doing what and needs the healing, which is very fun. I like that. And I would be cool if they did something like that with like Wrath, people getting targeted by stuff, but it's not. Worst you got is the guy dropping liquid hells, but it stops hitting him before he dies, and that's all.
And
So I guess.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry. So I guess the other problem is like, yeah, the job differential thing is true and probably a part of it, but also Scholar trivializes so much on its own anyway with the ploy.
Yeah.
That it's like still it still definitely shines in that area. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, they tried to stop deploy with Catalyze, but you just stack enough buffs and it's back.
Can't stop Scholar. Every expansion, everyone's like, oh, Scholar, it's not looking so hot. And then every single time.
Well, I think it's just the fight nature. I don't think if this fight was more designed like T, I don't think Scholar would be as strong. I think Sage would be stronger in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. Because Sage has like better like HPS. It's just that Scholar has that extra big fuck off, don't die button. And in a fight where all you have to do is not die and not heal much in between, it's really good.
Also has Illumination, which is just a 5% that like Sage doesn't have.
Yeah, that extra 5%, yeah. I guess since we're talking more about jobs, I think a good question actually was, did you guys how did you guys consider your comp? Did you guys think about going Sage Astro, Sage White Mage, Astro Scholar, Scholar White Mage? Or did you guys have a set in stone, we're doing this is obviously the safest bet or the best bet?
Let's go first.
I mean, I can just say I went with what I thought I would have fun on. Didn't really pick one thinking it was better for Frog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, we thought about which one might be better, but I just kind of ended up going with this one, and I think people agreed it would be better. But I just like Scholar and wanted to play it.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
We talked about comp a bit before, but pretty much settled on if there's going to be like timed mit checks, that Scholar is just better because of deploy mostly. So Scholar was pretty much a lock, but we bounced around between the idea of Astro or White Mage for a while because the White Mage buffs were really significant. And White Mage, we knew already White Mage is a powerhouse with downtime. So in terms of any damage checks, White Mage would be really strong. But ultimately, collective and neutral sect means stronger mit checks, which is why we settled on Astro Scholar.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was partly our reason too for Astro. I was a bit tempted by White Mage, but I felt like I was actually just more comfortable in Astro than White Mage anyway. So
Yeah, I knew going into it that White Mage would definitely be pumping more damage for sure, but like this is ultimate, so I figured let's just go with the option that gives me more tools. And Astro definitely has them. Plus, Macro ended up coming in clutch during Meteors for sure. Like to get to the next prod point, like Astro just pops off at that part after Death in the Heavens.
I would like hold a Lord as early as like the rewind.
Oh,
I
yeah.
drew it, and it just sometimes you get the double Lord, sometimes you don't, but it's so good.
Oh, me too. Right at the start of the rewind is where I would start holding the
Yeah,
Lord because
yeah.
you can't like double hit anymore after that.
It sounds like
Crazy
you guys.
how much.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you go.
I
you
was
go.
gonna say it's crazy how much Astro. Another job that kind of gets a lot of slack, but the tools they pack, and especially the tools they got this expansion, like I don't understand how Macrocosmos flies under the radar. It almost feels like the job is disgusting right now. I don't care what they do to White Mage.
It's very satisfying to get that like AoE benediction from Macrocosmos in some areas. Like end of the first Thornton trio was a really good spot for it, I thought. The Gale Flare, you pop it right before the third hit after it takes the first 2 hits of damage, and it's just a full top. It's just a really satisfying button. It's probably my like favorite ability they've ever added to this game.
I actually think after the update to Lilybell, I mean, I think it's actually pretty comparable utility wise. Like they're both really strong.
Oh, I think Lilybell's way better.
Yeah,
Lilybell's good.
Like now that you can like auto pop it whenever you want is really good, and it's just one of those tools that when you compare it to Macrocosmos, it's just Macrocosmos just requires like so much more brain power to use, and it's not you can't like risk as much because like obviously you're not going to try to drop down to like 10% HP to get as much value as possible. Whereas like Lilybell just pops. That was really good with like Akmorans too. Like, you didn't really think about like trying to time it or anything. I think they're both pretty comparable. It just depends like what kind of mechanic it is that it's being utilized on.
Depends what you're using on. I think it's like Lilybell is very good at the Akmorans. I wouldn't use Macrocosmos on the Akmorn. I think it's much better in like Gale Flare because you're actually taking just like
I want
your
to talk
entire
about
health
that,
bar.
So basically, the way we did our Akmorns is I would use all my 2 minutes on the first and the third one, and we would macro the second one, right, with like Star and Horoscope in the middle.
All right.
And there's one thing that Macrocosmos has that I wish they would start doing more. When you execute macro, it's instant.
Yes.
It is frame 1, every single party member immediate. So I can actually, because with Earthly Star is like one of the slowest ripples in the game, right? We get hit by the first hit of the second Akmorn with my Star down, and I'll press Star, and the heal won't even hit some people until like the third or the fourth hit. It takes so long. So having macro there is so good because you can actually react and click it, and it's immediate. It's really good in that regard. I wish more heals would start doing that.
So it's actually so fast that I like on our clear VOD, even the time I use it, I actually used it slightly too early, and our Dragoon didn't get the heal, so we had to like emergency solo heal him. It was fine, but it was like very scary to see at the moment.
I
do love that
ripples of heals. Especially Star, dude. Star is so slow.
Well, they definitely buffed it at the start of, I think, this expansion too, but it's still noticeably like slow. It still propagates through the enemies and then the party and whatever.
Yeah, they show them they can do it, like with how shields work now.
Yeah.
Even with the buff, Star is it's not quick.
I guess on the topic, when I was doing our kills with White Mage, Lilybell has struggles on Aquamarine because it can't trigger fast enough. Like
Oh, interesting.
you get hit by the like one hit, and then it starts like propagating the heal, and you get hit by the next hit before the heal is done, so it doesn't trigger again sometimes. Like we'll go through the second Aquamarine where we get hit 6 times, and I'll still have 1 or 2 stacks on my Lilybell at the end, and I'll be like struggling the whole time. Like, why won't this pop fast enough?
Kind of like that in what fight was it? There was another fight this tier. I think it was a Savage tier that was kind of like that where you got hit too fast. Oh no, it was trial 1. The accessory trial.
We're calling it that.
I don't know. I just playing it safe, just in case for YouTube.
The rotating guy with the horn.
Yeah. the AoE, the sticks AoE, it hit so fast that
The snakes.
it would hit every other one. Yeah, Lilybell does. That's a weakness of Lilybell for sure. I think as long as you use Lilybell on like the second or third Aquamarine, it's probably not as big a deal. But yeah, that's really annoying. It actually happens during transition too.
Did you try to use your Lilybell during that?
Well, that's just where we use it. We use it to during the
Does it come back up?
Yeah.
And by like second Aquamarine or second Gigaflare ish?
We used it for oh no, I'm talking about the the rewind transition.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad.
I'm like, what?
That's
that
what I
seems
thought
like
he meant
a little
too, yeah.
wasteful.
No, yeah, no. I mean, actually, I guess you technically could use it there and be back up for the last Aquamarine, but you don't really need stuff for the last Aquamarine.
So the harsher font part?
Yeah.
I guess in that scenario, you would kind of like want it to trigger every other.
Yeah, because only 5,000 damage a tick, so it makes sure it's healing 10,000 every other one instead.
You actually ran into an issue with that though, because sometimes you would have an extra stack at some points, and sometimes you wouldn't. So because of that like inconsistency, it led to because ideally you would have the last Lilybell hit go off after they would like restore some of the HP from the party, make sure they didn't die from like the last 4 hits or whatever that happens after. And sometimes that wouldn't be there because they would just register like early or fast or early or late. So the inconsistency was like really annoying. But I mean, just talking about all this, it seems like when you're talking about the healing comp again, the safest bet seems to just be Scholar Astro, right? Just Astro has the pure healing of White Mage but has more mitigation, and Scholar just having maybe a little less pure healing than Sage, but you have Expedient and just massive shields. That seems to be the consensus, right?
Pretty much.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go on. Sound like you're gonna continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say yes, but I think that it's not required. It's meta, but man, you can get by with any combo, I think.
Definitely.
I guess from my perspective, it's a case of because the fact that Sage and White Mage's like strengths over the counterparts are like better HPS and throughput basically. The thing is that you can kind of it's not a lot that requires really hard throughput, and when you get to a mechanic that does, you can usually solve it with just like good execution and like precasts and stuff, right? Whereas mitigation, you can't really like conjure up out of skill. You have cooldowns, and that's it. So having more of those means you get around more things. At least that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I think another tool that Scholar actually has that many people don't really think about is Rune 2. I think that's actually a massive tool in Scholar's disposal. It's just it's something you don't have to think about when you're moving, and I think it's actually really good in the final phase, and it's why I think they do so much damage compared to Sage, especially in like the first time clears, just because you don't have to think about optimizing your damage when you press Rune 2. You press it, you gain that GCD. So that's something Sage can't do because Sage can only press Toxicon.
Boy, I really fucking wish I had Ruin 2 when we were progging the Dragon's Phase.
And Dragon's Phase would be really insane too, yeah. It's just something, I think it just makes it a little bit less brain power, which is, something that a lot of world proggers seem to agree with, trying to minimize thinking.
Man, can you imagine this fight was released in Shadowbringers, like having the 2.5 GCD for some of these classes on like Dragons and Needhog?
Oh god.
Rune 2 would
I've
be
been
even
cold and
better.
I don't want to think about it.
That'd be fun.
Be fun for scholars.
It'd be fun
When I
for
was
white mage too.
Astro maybe.
When I was thinking
The
about
DS
this,
may
Astro
make all
had the
moving.
1.5.
The initial
Yeah,
damage.
Astro would be the same. White mage and
Astro kicked Debbie in the corner. See ya.
Just before we get off the topic of healer comp again, did you guys think there was like one specific healer that is maybe a little bit more lackluster per se or weaker than the other healers in this fight? Or maybe there's maybe a specific phase that one healer's better than another, and then vice versa.
I mean, if we're comparing like I don't want to compare the shield ones to the other ones, but
Yeah, of course.
we're just comparing Scholar and Sage.
Mhm.
I think Scholar's a bit better than Sage. Yeah.
Just for the shield.
The deploy Fey Illumination Expedient stuff that Sage just doesn't have. But you could just take Sage Scholar and there you go.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're running with, right? Like if you have a dancer or a red mage or a paladin, like suddenly it kind of shifts around a little bit. Like my friend Perry was running white mage, sage, and no paladin, and magic barrier ended up being the difference in living or dying. It's like, okay, when we get to that point, we want to dial it back and look at that's where the mid healers have the advantage, right?
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about. Has anyone else here actually done it on Scholar Sage yet?
Only
I've done the dragons.
2 phases, yeah.
I've seen a group do it, but I've not done it.
Okay,
It's really good.
My group, you think so? Okay, we gotta talk about this because my group spent like 10 hours ish like doing clears with Scholar Sage because that was like the first time we switched jobs. We had to like go back to the drawing board and like figure out what we were doing with our cooldowns, right? But we spent like 10 hours doing that, and I thought it was awful. I was not having a good time.
Really?
Yeah, because at least I was coming off of Astro for that. So the thing is that the biggest benefit of that is being able to get the double soil every 30 seconds, right?
Mhm.
The thing is that collective from Astro kind of like already is basically a soil just on a 60-second cooldown instead of 30. So a lot of the parts where you really need that double soil where it really benefits, if you have an Astro, you're already getting that a lot of the time.
Well, CU is also only 5 seconds if you use it efficiently too, compared to Caracal, which is 15.
Yeah, I mean, you do get more like Caracal coverage, right? And on more mechanics, and it's easier, and you don't have to be stacked. But I don't know, personally, I just felt that the parts where you get extra from that compared to what you would be getting with collective just aren't really like very impactful areas, and not having Medica 2 really like put a damper on things because I'd end up having to do like quite a bit of regular Medicas on Sage.
Which
Prognosis.
which part gave you the most trouble to make you feel that way? Is it dragons or final phase?
Not dragons, because dragons it's like any phase with a lot of movement, Sage is really good in because Sage can heal and move at the same time, and they get the 3 Toxicons and the 2 Phlegma balls, So Sage has a lot of movement. It's really nice, actually. But in terms of actual like healing, like mitigation benefit, I didn't actually really feel very much mitigation benefit personally. It didn't feel much better than it would have been otherwise.
I remember obviously R has more input because he's done it further. I've only been to Eyes because I did it in like a party finder with a friend. But like even up to like I phase, like it was, I mean, I thought it was crazy how much I didn't have to even think about, like, because the thing Sage neuters the busters, right? Like Haima, Terracol, Krasis combined, Physis 2, even just like the boost the healing.
That's another thing, is I actually felt like I had a harder time mitigating the tanks on Sage than on Astro.
Really?
Really?
Yes, because our Scholar, we already have like access to an Adlo, right? So the Sage Adlo doesn't really like do much in that situation, right? So forget about that. But the thing is that Astro has the 2 stacks of Intersection and Exaltation, and White Mage has the same thing, but like a little bit more, because it's Benison and Aquaville. So you can mitigate both tanks at the same time. Whereas with Haima, Haima and Krasis are like, and I guess like Caracal to get landed on both tanks. I guess that's pretty good too, but I don't know. I felt like double Intersection and Exaltation was a lot more comfy compared to Haima.
also
because a lot
land.
of the
Yeah.
tank busters are just big single hits. So like Haima doesn't really do much, right? Because you only get the one shield on it.
Can work well on the cleaves, and you also get the Sage's version of Soil also stacking on the tanks for the busters when they're both taking it, which is like 10% extra on both of them.
I was abusing Carachel for tanks for sure. Like for the heal and the cleaves, like I would just throw it there. And because I could put it there because the Scholar would handle Soil on the raid wise, like the Ancient Quaggas and stuff. I think part of the reason I'm so towards it is because I'm running with Bard and Monk in the group. And so when you throw Min, Mantra, Krasis, and like Recitation Deploy, like I'm not even hitting a button during Horse Chiffon phase. Like I'm just hitting doses for like way after the LB3 falls off until I finally start throwing heals on Horse Chiffon.
Yeah, I think
But I'll definitely have to wait till I see P7 because I'm scared about that. But so far, it feels a little. It doesn't feel too bad unless you like completely mismanage your like top up. Like I Numa'd on Meteors, and I'm like, oh wait, if I do it there, and then the top before the first lock of Fa is terrible. So I just took it off. And there's definitely like, oh, if you press that too early, you're just kind of fucked. We can't recover from this unless I just spam Prognosis.
that's
Yeah,
definitely
that's one of the reasons why we like only considered like Scholar Sage for like a few moments, right? Is because Scholar Sage is really good when you can plan out all your cooldowns really well, right? Because they have a lot of cooldowns. It's just that if you mess one up, you're kind of just like pressing Prognosis for 20 seconds straight trying to fix it.
Yeah, it's very unforgiving.
some cases you probably can't even fix it because like in last phase you mess up your Numa. I mean, you're probably using Numa to top up for your Giga Flares there, and there's probably no shot that you're gonna be, if you use Numa before that, there's probably no shot you're gonna be able to heal that. I mean,
exactly.
it's definitely way, at least for the final phase specifically too. Like I think that's like the big risk taker. So you have to something like, it's not something that's you can just kind of brain AFK. You have to like think about it, plan it out, put it on a spreadsheet, make sure that everything's fine, and then you can move forward. Whereas like white mage, pure healer x shield healer, you don't have to do that. You can just YOLO it for the most part and be fine.
Oh man, Rockmorns in that run were rough.
This is actually the primary reason I would always say like double shield healer into any kind of blind prog or to prog where you just don't know what's coming is kind of grief because it requires so much planning to get a solid execution out of it. It reminds me of the people that were trying to do like double regen healer T for a similar reason, where it's like you can do it with neutral sect back when it was white mage plus Astro, but why put it that tight, or why make it so you're limiting yourself to a good execution to get it right when you could just Plenary Rapture your way out of a mistake?
But Keo, the developer said any comp can do it.
Yeah, they can. Just don't want you would increase the difficulty. But that said, it's a lot less hard, I think, on double shield than it would be on double regen in most of these situations.
Is it possible?
for
on
sure.
double?
Oh god, white mage Astro combo for this.
Well, not anymore. Like, yeah, obviously.
Oh god.
Oh, you mean
Oh
like
no.
you mean like when back in Shadowbringers when people were bringing white mage journal into prog, and it's like, please no, just go knock.
Yeah, well, I mean, I
Go
know a
journal
group.
after we clear.
I know a group that was progging T not that long ago with Diurnal Ast and White Mage, but in Shadowbringers, not Endwalk. And I was like, nah, you couldn't. I wouldn't do it on healer or non healer. I wouldn't just watch the mid checks fail just because we literally don't have shields outside of neutral.
It's one of those things where it's like you can do it. Like you can do any of this stuff. It's just it's a thing where you can do it if you plan it completely perfectly and use every cooldown to their maximum ability, right? And during prog, you're not going to be doing that, right? Because if you could do that, you would be farming it, not progging it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think another big component with double shield too is that your MP economy is very bad compared to pure healer, and if you die, make a mistake, have to even maybe res, I mean you're out of commission in a full uptime fight. That was kind of alleviated in this ultimate with all the downtime. There's a lot of parts of the fight where you can actually just kind of restore your MP almost to max, like during these moments of downtime, like for between I phase, rewind to Dark Thornton, even going into the final phase, you're just kind of sitting there for 60 seconds, maybe casting like 2 GCDs between each bleed. I mean, that's still enough time to kind of regen your mana, especially when you pop like an Aether Flow or use like a brain fart. What's the sage thing called again?
Uh,
The stacks.
oh,
Adder's Gall.
Adder's Gall.
Yeah, I
D4
think of the name. I was like, I haven't. Yeah, if you use Adder's Gall, Lucid, copy back up to full going into final phase.
I just call every Sage ability I call it Sage's Scholar equivalent.
So I mean, did you guys have any MP issues as a berry healer specifically in this fight?
I put on a little MP, not a huge amount, like not ridiculous. And the only point I dropped somewhat low would be just the last phase, but it was right before an ether flow comes off cooldown anyway, and so no, not really any big issues.
No, I came into Prague with like a couple piety pieces just to be safe.
Yeah.
That's just my standard. Like I come in with like maybe 200 piety over the min if I'm feeling confident, and I took those off pretty quickly in Prague. And I don't feel like I was ever really stressed except when I messed up Lucid.
Oh, wow, I never even
or had to do raises.
Thing.
More
confident than me.
I started with 1,000, I think, and then I went down to like I kept the ring, but that was it.
Oh my god, 1,000.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
way
I think
more.
everybody. You don't want to drop Vit, right? So.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
shield healer MP is really bad, and especially when you have to use your GCD heals like that, it can go down really fast if you don't have piety. So I didn't want to make any. I just want to be safe as possible. And then,
I did have a third set that was just as much piety as like I could. Well, not as much, but it was a ridiculous amount. So
yeah, I was not taking any risk, and then I was like, I'm at 10k MP like the whole fight. I'm just gonna take off like everything, keep the ring on just for the bit.
I guess if you want like a little insight into World Frog, I had 3 gear sets that were just varying piety.
And I'm sure. How about for peer healers? You guys even think about MP or?
I griefed Omega hard by like actually melding piety on like Astro. I don't know what I was fucking thinking. It was the worst thing I'd ever done.
Your heart was in the right place. It's fine.
I mean, I started with some piety on, but I think with a couple pieces of piety on, and by the time we got through the last phase, like through like most of the last phase, once or twice, I just took it all off. I was like, nah, all I have to do is play cards. Well,
yeah, I mean, Astro and White Mage. I mean, White Mage now too. Like the 20-second Lily. That's
White Mage is even better than Astro and MP now.
Yeah, it's insane, especially with like thin air raises too. You don't have to worry about like losing all that MP. Did you guys at any point in Prague, maybe not like a healer comp or healer, but did you guys at any point maybe switch a job for extra mitigation or even maybe change a healer?
We kept our same comp throughout.
We had a paladin for a lockout.
Oh yeah. I think Kana was just bored or something. I don't know.
We talked about some job switching before like we started. We were like, oh, we'll have Zep go in as summoner for like a lockout or whatever. But in the end, before we started, we just decided, well, if we do that, then he's gonna have to relearn his like DPS cooldowns anyway. So like in the end, it doesn't really. I don't think it's kind of hard to switch jobs when you're like deep into a fight.
Yeah.
So we just never switched anything.
Yeah.
You were kind of locked in, yeah.
The like damage or execution, or the damage or damage or mitigation you would gain from a job switch, like the marginal difference, kind of gets counterbalanced by the fact that that person's execution is gonna go down for a while because they have to like relearn all the cooldowns and execution and stuff. So you could, like after a certain point, which is pretty early, you're kind of just better off toughing it out, so you don't have to like reprog anything early.
It was actually one of the more punishing fights when it came to your initial roster choice, because you ended up being locked in very quickly for that reason. So if you made a bad call on comp, you'd have a hard time switching it without reprogging, which, yeah, it made you kind of lock in. That said, I don't think the choices were too hard this time around.
Yeah, I think the only change we made was day 3. We were in I phase, and at that point we're like, okay, we're just gonna bring like our bar switch to dancer, and we never looked back. Or like the best change we made. Like min was good, and in some spots it's probably stay good, but like improv and curing waltz was, and just the damage that Dancer brought made it to where like if we had like accidents during meteors or some depths in Nidhogg damage down, we didn't suffer as much because of it. Definitely.
I hear the whispers from my group. Have you thought about Dancer? And I was like, do we need it? No. Not thinking about it.
Bard's not bad if you can have good push times. I think the issue is just bad push time screws your songs, right?
Well, no, actually, the songs were weird to figure out, but not the topic. Not the topic of the show. Not a Bard show.
Let's see.
Dancer is definitely a strong pick.
Dancer's a healer. I guess curing waltz.
It's fun. We have a bit of a meme about Dancer in our group that was like always a trap to switch to it because it ended up just being not good for the fights for so many tiers. This was the tier, man. This was the tier we should have gone for it.
The new improvised improvised finish was really good during this fight.
Yeah,
5% guaranteed, even if you just instant tap it. 5% max HP shield is
it's actually really good.
A bonus 5% HP shield, sometimes 10% on some transitions. It's so comfortable. It's really
especially with all the downtime. Yeah, you don't even lose anything. Like Nidhogg transition, you can just hold it.
Waltz is what the same potency as an Indom or something if it's everyone stacked, something of that in that range.
It's like an AoE second wind or something.
Yeah, I think it's like 4. I think it's like 9,000-10,000 or something AoE. Depends on if it crits, I think.
I think we talked about this next question a little bit in one of our previous ones, but you guys think there's a particular healer class that maybe excels at specific mechanics, or maybe ones that struggle a little bit more? I know we talked about a little bit with Scholar versus Sage, but maybe talk a little bit more about White Mage versus Astrologian.
There's one big one that I can think off the top of my head that I think about whenever people talk about White Mage. White Mage can heal and move, which is pretty nice for Gigaflare. Pretty comfortable.
Oh yeah, Rapture, yeah.
Not only that, but then it's just tank damage right after the Giga. You have all of basically the X's. You have 2 tank autos and the swap in and out, and you have all that time to get all your lilies back before you really need them again.
Exactly, yeah. You can even afford to use one on Awkhorn to catch up, and you still have all 3 back for the next Gigaflare. It's like White Mage and Sage both just absolutely poop all over Gigaflare. When you have Scholar Astro, you kind of have to deal with like timing your heals very perfectly. And White Mage and Sage are just both like, haha, instant sucker, Lily, see ya.
Sage, I definitely would Swift the sucker during the Giga Flare, or Sage is just, free instant.
They really showed the glaring weakness of Lightspeed and Div because it didn't line up with Giga Flare. So you make the choice, right? Either you like screw up your burst, or you hold Lightspeed for the Giga Flare to be safer, and that's always an awful choice to make, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, Final Phase. I mean, I think the average Astrologian, because I went over a bunch of logs for Final Phase, because I'm super interested in like what jobs do the most in like the most important fight or phases. Astro's consistently just a lot lower than White Mage, and I think it's just because White Mage's damage is just so easy to do, whereas Astrologian in that phase, I mean, on top of just that phase being one of the most stressful parts for healers in the entire game, trying to do that on top of doing your cards properly, I mean, that's probably pretty mentally taxing, is it not?
In the last phase, I think every healer has like their own upsides and downsides. They all have something they do really well in the last phase. It's actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
There's just a lot to manage on Astro, especially if you're using Lightspeed for healing, which for me, I use Lightspeed for healing on the Awkhorn and Dragon's phase, and one of the Giga Flares in the last phase. Like I didn't have Lightspeed for my last 3 burst windows. It's a lot, especially when like 80% of your GCDs are healing GCDs on your first clear.
I mean that's a good point, because I mean that's technically maybe like an advantage for White Mage too, because when you're Astrologian spamming, let's say neutral sec to aspected Helios back to back, I mean White Mage pops a Rapture that does almost the equivalent, maybe under Plenary too. That's technically a GCD that they're not doing because it's being refunded into their misery. So it's like damage positive for them, whereas like Astral Legend just loses damage trying to do that. I mean, there's like these little niche little factors that go in.
Yeah, plus with how like fucked Astro's burst windows are, and as well, but just healers in general, with how like how much healing healers have to do, we had to move our burst windows around to basically accommodate for when the healers don't have to do anything, which made it a little easier with the card issue, at least. But it's still a big problem.
What about white mage weakness, glaring weakness? Any weaknesses in this fight outside of maybe mitigation?
Not really, just mitigation. It has good HPS with plenary. It does good damage. It has a lot of movement. It's easy. It's simple. It's just the mitigation that's like the only weakness, really.
Yeah, I feel like white mage is in a pretty damn good spot right now. I feel like, well, maybe getting ahead of myself here, but I think it's going to be a solid pick for Savage next year, just because mid checks in there usually aren't as bad. But you're definitely getting maybe even more damage for a lot less work than Astro is. Like Astro is kind of just way too bloated with how it works, and I was actually really sad that they didn't change Minor Arcana this patch, but it is what it is.
I mean, that's the thing with Astral Legend, yeah, Minor Arcana RNG. Like, if you could pick between, Lady of Crowns, I think it's goated in Ultimate. I think it's such a good tool. Especially because,
I did like drawing. Sorry, go on.
No, yeah, no. I mean, this is your show, let's go.
I did like drawing Ladies of Crowns in the final phase quite a bit. It just felt good to have that whenever I did get it. That was like the rare time I felt like happy to see one.
Yeah, whenever I do Tia and Astra and I'm like, I pull Lady during like Living Liquid or BG, I'm like, thank you. It's just nice to have. It's like a buffer, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty nice actually, because there's a lot of parts in the fight where I do like an aspected Helios for a very small amount of HP just because I want us to be topped, right? You know, no accidents. So drawing a Lady of Crowns actually lets me get an extra Malefic a lot of the time, but you know, a lot of the time it doesn't, so it kind of sucks. But
yeah, I did a few times like that during the fight, like the steep enrage at the end of the ice phase. I'm like, okay, we gotta be top for sure. And if I have a Lady there, it's like, oh nice, I get a free Malefic.
I definitely cast a heal there for like 5k HP sometimes.
Let's see. Is there anything you would maybe is doing this ultimate as your respective job? Is there anything you would maybe change about your job that you think maybe is too strong or too weak that you think needs maybe like a buff or a nerf? Like
make a union and do something else, or give me something else to do with my gauge.
Oh, yeah. I don't even heal any serious content, and I feel that way. I hate that thing.
The Fairy Tether feels so bad.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Cardia is the new thing, and Fairy Tether's like old and busted. It's sad how better one is than the other.
I never liked the Fairy Tether. Especially after they put Seraph in the game, where you pull Seraph out and your tank healing is nerfed because you can't use it.
You think that they, when they made Cardia, they would give it a Scholar too, but no.
Do you almost wish it was just like, I guess not even. I was thinking maybe you could just bump the whole gauge for one big heal, almost like it's like a Bard Apex or something. But I guess that might not serve much a better purpose. It'd just be less annoying, I suppose.
I did like it when Fey Blessing ate the gauge a little bit because it meant I could meaningfully spend the gauge. But I mean, they got rid of that, and yeah, it was a way to just keep it from being topped up so I could use it in the few windows where it felt good to use, when like the boss would stop doing anything for like 15 seconds and just auto attack, like Omega does right after like the second patch in 012. It's just like, oh, I can use Union here and it feels good. But you'd have to like keep your gauge from overcapping until then, or otherwise nobody wants to overcap a gauge. It feels awful.
I think when it comes to the more unbalanced jobs, I think Scholar Sage definitely a little bit more unbalanced than White Mage Astro. I think we can all agree, right? Maybe not. Different opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Okay.
I feel like not that I would change too much with the regen healers, but I feel like now that White Mage has 20-second Lily and its damage has been buffed, maybe, and I'm saying this from you, Momo, because you said this once, maybe they could give Lightspeed 2 charges to make Astro a bit less awful, especially with the burst window, but we'll see.
I'm about to say I've never said that, but I see what you mean.
If they did 2 stacks, if they did 2 stacks of Lightspeed though, after what they did to Thin Air, what they do to Lightspeed, if they make it 2 stacks, might not.
If they make Lightspeed so it only has like 1 GCD, that literally killed the job. That would be so bad.
Be careful what you ask for. Yeah.
That's just the crazy part about Lightspeed is when I use Lightspeed, I frequently need every single second of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes with like what Narrlocke said earlier too, where like he had to drift his Lightspeed for healing purposes, and that ended up screwing over his rotation because he didn't have it where he actually needed it for his burst. So I mean, like that's like one of Astro's, I think, biggest flaws right now, outside the RNG. And some people don't, have some people have different opinions on RNG, but when it comes to Scholar and Sage, do you think Scholar shields need to be nerfed, or maybe Sage shields need to be buffed, or do you think that Scholar being more mitigation based, less pure healing, and Sage being more pure healing based, less mitigation based is a good dichotomy?
I think it's fine.
I think they could do with buffing skill Zoe on Sage. That is similar to being like a non-crit deploy if you use it on a shield for them, but once you crit the deploy, it's just not even comparable.
Mm-hmm.
But they could buff that. It might cause some messy thing with Numa, where Numa ends up being like an AoE benediction if they buff Zoe, but maybe that's fine.
If they buff Zoe, they'll probably just nerf Numa to compensate, I imagine.
That too.
It's a hard topic because the elephant in the room here is deploy, right? And it's like, do you want to take that away from them? Because that's like do you want to make classes more unique or keep them more evened out?
Exactly, that's how I feel about it too. Like, I'm fine where they're both good at different things, but maybe one of the things that one is good at is a little bit better, like the mitigation. I would rather have that than just make Sage even more Scholar 2 than it already is.
I think it depends a lot too on how they design future fights. So like in this case, the fight was all meh. So the job that had Buttermint was like really stand out. Whereas I think in the Savage, they're both pretty comparable.
Yeah, I think Scholar gets a little bit more value in Savage just because I think Expedient is just overall more useful. I mean, we could talk about Expedient too. In this the Ultimate. I mean, I felt like it was like overall. I think we only used it for movement on 2 mechanics. Everything else was just pure mitt. So it felt like it wasn't as useful.
Well, I think right off the bat, the first trio, it got a lot of value in that.
Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah, that's where we used it.
There's a lot of just people. It might be slow to realize where they need to go, and they just make it because they got sprint. If someone dies, you res them in a tower, and you have the Dragoon dive. You make it to your spot because you had the expedient. It works really well.
And it freed up sprint for the first part of the trio when like someone calls the Dragoon dive safe spot wrong, and then everyone's scrambling. Everyone has sprint because they know they'll have the expedient after, or dodging the earthquake or whatever. It's really nice to have expedient.
Yes.
I have to imagine the other spot is Wrath Flame. We saw a lot of value in expedient during Wrath Flame.
Actually, you said you did it so it falls off before you move. If I recall. Yeah, we actually used it. Like, we had the sprint up while we were running. I was surprised to hear that.
Team asked for it to fall off before we start moving because they're worried about moving too fast and then running out of safe spot before the first orbs exploded.
Dude, I feel like I'm an expedient hater because I felt like every point during our prog, I was like, please get this sprint off of me. I don't want to be fast. Like, every time there's twisters in alternate Thornton, I always have expedients on me. I'm like, I don't want to be fast. I don't want this twister to be in the middle of the room. Get it off of me.
Funny thing about that, we had a few incidents since expedient came out in this expansion. There's been a few incidents where people don't fully understand how quick they're going to run into the edge of the arena.
I've never
And
seen
we
this.
may have had a few issues with Expedient where somebody may have overshot their movement to a particular spot.
I love it.
People
I've
who,
never seen it, but I can
do
understand
that.
it happening, and I love this. I love the
people who
idea.
like their space bars a bit too much.
A little bit too much, yeah. But man, I don't know. I love it. As somebody who just is on the receiving end of Expedient, something like Wrath Flame, where a lot of the times we were using the speed up during the run and then using sprint afterwards to make sure we were in our spots for the dark and light part towards the end. It's hard to imagine playing without it after playing with it for so long.
I mean, the really strong thing about Expedient is that it doesn't propagate. It's on everybody at the same time. The sprint effect affects everybody at the same time and falls off at the same time. That's actually a really strong tool because that pretty much means everybody's on the same page. I think the big issue is that, like, actually, not even just this ultimate. I feel like in at least UT as well, Expedient, if you had Expedient for that fight, it wouldn't really get as much value as it would in like UCOB or Savage. And I think going into that, I definitely considered that going into this fight because I did start this fight on Sage, and as soon as we got to like Trio 2, I switched to Scholar just because, like you said, Pulse, the first trio in Thornton was like Expedient's playground. Like that was one of the most beneficial ones.
It's
Any
so
any
valued.
mechanic where you gotta like get to positions that are RNG, it just helps so much to have a group wide sprint.
Yeah,
So like everywhere we had like, oh god, we got to get somewhere fast, like Wrath Flames, like Death of the Heavens,
Yep, death.
like any spots where it was like, oh god, react to debuffs, react to arena position. It was so good.
Yeah, Death of the Heavens was the other place just at the start before people are spreading out to the walls. Definitely seen at least a couple spots where someone initially runs to the wrong way and still makes it to the spot they need to be at.
Yep.
And you know what's crazy is like this is all after we're talking about all of this after they like nerfed the move by 50%. Like what were they thinking? Like you remember all the people
20
memeing on
seconds.
Scholar? Remember everyone memeing Scholar in the benchmark or whatever when they released the job action trailer?
Those are
It's
very
like,
funny
oh my
memes.
god.
It was good. We all knew it was going to be good. I mean,
Yeah, we knew
After the media tour, it was much better reception. Once people actually got to kind of see that it was a full sprint, plus it was all that damage meant, there's no more memeing at that point.
We could actually talk about that. Do you guys feel like the Expedient nerf actually impacted anything like too much? I feel like outside Wrath of Flames, I mean, that extra 10 seconds wouldn't really have done anything.
No, I don't think so.
I think it was like broken at 20 seconds because then you also have your own sprint, so it's just 30 seconds of sprint.
You think so?
I think it's pretty rare that you actually want to be faster more than like 6
Yeah.
seconds.
I think thinking back to the last tier Savage, it would have messed with some of the timings I did, but I changed it. It's still broken.
Act 2 definitely felt the nerf.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Depends how long the mechanic is, really.
You don't think because maybe it shares a, because I mean, I think the elephant in the room is that Scholar technically loses, unless like you can obviously line it up with a mechanic like Act 2 and P4S, right, or something like that, you're losing the mitigation source if you're using it for movement speed a lot of the times, and or you're just using it for movement speed instead of mitigation, or mitigation for, instead of movement, right? Whereas something like Sage, they can Holos is like their equivalent to Expedient in terms of mitigation, right? They can just do that instead. You think it's still too broken when you like consider the whole toolkit, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, right now, I don't know if I think it's too broken. 20, 100% broken. It's definitely very good right now, though.
I think it's still OP. I think it's still way too powerful, but it fundamentally, the way it operates that's broken is that it helps resolve mechanics, which is something that's not super, like, that's not imbalancing the jobs too much. It's just a slight advantage.
But it's there's very few jobs that can have such an impact on the whole group in terms of solving mechanics. Things like Act 2 and P4, it's just so strong when you don't know where you're going and it's an RNG east west north south, that stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a bit off topic. How was, like, for the people that have played Sage in this fight, how is Icarus in this fight, the gap closer? Does it like get much value?
trying to think of like a spot, and
It's literally, it saved my life when I went to the wrong group on the first trio. Other than that, though, not too much. Like,
Not really. I pressed it once, I think, on Sage.
yeah, it's
I'm
like
actually.
maybe if you want to like dive in to do a phlegma, like when the blue eye dies, but
Yeah, I
can't
use
really-
it on the eyes too. That's what I do too.
Yeah,
I use
yeah.
it to dive. I use it to move to the red eye from the meteor streams, and that's it.
it's such a fun button.
I think
Just wait
Icarus-
until it gives like damage reduction to the person you jump to. If you jump to a person,
That'd be
No.
cool. I think
Jump into a
Icarus
tank,
gets.
Buster, get
jump in the
behind me.
tank.
I think Icarus
down,
gets a lot
Mr.
of slack. It's one of those abilities that is very selfish, but that selfishness can be very beneficial at times. Like especially when you're learning a mechanic. And I think somebody brought up sanctity, right? Being able to just jump between the groups if somebody's in the wrong spot, or maybe you're in the wrong spot. That's something like during prog that you can kind of utilize, and it's the same for like a lot of the mechanics. Like even in, I think in bad or P6, you can just Icarus to your your white debuff partner. You don't really have to think about too much. There's like a lot of these like little small things you can do, and I think it kind of is super beneficial. Even in the first trio too, right? Like let's say you learn the mechanic, you're maybe slow on picking up where Thornton's jumping, or you're just not moving fast enough. You can just Icarus to the party stack and.
There's the Pinax from last year. If you get the bad pattern with the spread into the raid wides at the end, it can be really nice if you just are one of the people who's spread far. You don't have to like make a strat around having a healer close to. You just get in there and immediately can start healing. So you can have uses like that.
Right, it is a knockback cancel, right? So you can essentially use it on things where you would need to arm's length and do another knockback, like I said, bad P-Nex.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about Icarus, at least in my opinion, is one of the reasons I don't end up using it very much is because Sage already has really good movement.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has a lot of instance. So a lot of the time I just don't even think about using it because I'm already just like walking across the room, pressing Phlegma once, pressing my dot once, pressing Toxicon once, and I'm on the other side of the room already.
Take it if you don't want it on Astro.
Yeah, I would love that on Astro.
I guess let's if that's all for that, and moving on to like another question, was there any habits that you formed prior to this ultimate that you had to kind of reform because like they were bad or they cause issues? Like let's say maybe like shielding too early, shielding too late, or like maybe utilizing like old shields, how they kind of probably it's not much of an issue anymore, but you know how like shields used to not propagate or used to propagate, but now they don't.
So I did have this problem on Sanctity, where I like neutral sected the. Did we deploy? We did. We didn't have like those. I don't remember what we did exactly, but I neutral sected healed between the Dark Knight jumps, and because the shield goes up so fast now, I would not actually get my own shield for the second hit. It would just catch the first one, and then I'd not have it and drop way lower.
I think I've gotten kind of used to it after a tier, the shield applying faster.
The thing about the shield applications is that the way it worked before, even if the shield itself didn't land on the player until the heal did, with the way it worked before, if the player already had a stronger shield at the time of the snapshot, even if it fell off in between, the shield would still not apply. So in that sense, casting your shields too early is still the same problem now as it was before, but now casting it too late is easier.
Yeah, I remember I ran into an issue actually during I phase where I actually had to click off my catalyzed shield because the shield was so strong that the bleeds didn't do enough damage to it. So when I casted a sucker, the Adlo shield was so strong that it didn't refresh. It actually killed me one pull because all we have for that is like sucker plus illumination for the yellow orbs.
Yeah,
and it
that's a
killed me.
classic.
Yeah, so like that was like something I had to actually start changing how to, you know, click this off every single pull.
The
Oh,
shield
he-
you have on you is too strong, and then you try to apply a new one, and it doesn't apply, and then it times out right before something
Yeah,
hits you.
that's exactly what happened.
The classic.
I kind of want to like that happens with the Seraph shield, and it really bugs me. Like, so I would use the constellation for 2 different things. It was actually just the Thornton trend. It was like the Thornton ultimate end and the final chorus, just because you use it at the end of the right before fairy goes away, and it would just last for final chorus. But the fairy's spamming just a single target one on people, and if we killed Thornton like too slow, it might just they might have the single target one that happened before the constellation that might fall off, and then they just wouldn't have that on top. Yeah. I don't think it was like required to live. I think without the constellation, but it's just nice to have a little extra there. But it's just dumb that it can happen.
I really hate that they took away the ability to control your fairies, or at least to stop your fairy from auto healing. I understand why they took away the ability to manually target it, because like that was, you know, they're trying to make the game like less high skill cap or whatever. But taking away the ability to just stop the fairy from doing it at all is kind of obnoxious sometimes, because it'll like pop veils and shit.
Did they? I think you can.
Can you?
I think the game.
I don't
You can't. I don't
recall
think
being
you
able
can't
to stop
completely
it.
stop. No.
Oh, really?
It'll
Thought
just
we'd
heal
hope-
whoever's the lowest health person below 90%.
You can
Is
theoretically
it like a recent change.
give it like SETI commands and all that, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Like, the
Yeah,
most
I
you can
think
do
it's- I
is
think it's
place.
recent.
You can place the fairy one side of the arena, place it in the back, and then keep moving back and forth, and she won't do anything. So that's like so much effort to just not do that like usually it's not worth, you know, doing that.
See, if you placed it on steady, I thought it didn't. Unless this is like a recent
Nope.
change that I didn't notice.
It has never worked for fairies, unfortunately.
Huh.
That's something we complained about a long time ago, back in
You,
Heaven's Word.
you can't affect Embrace at all now. It'll always just do Embrace entirely on its own as of right now.
Okay, I'm in game and I'm like taking off equipment with it on steady. It's not doing anything.
Oh yeah,
Maybe it
yeah.
just doesn't like you.
Yeah,
I use that for speed kills. Like you can make the fairy not do anything. That's how you LB cheese.
I wonder if that works on
Really?
Seraph, because that would have fixed my
Really?
problem.
Is that a
Yeah.
I need the
recent
tech
change?
because I remember that being a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it's definitely works right now.
Damn.
I get yelled at. Like, why are we so healthy, Ara? Like, oh, sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, I'm just curious if that works on Seraph now. That would fix the issue I just was having.
Like, you don't have to drag Eos like to a wall and like go to the other side of the room. Like, no, you can just tell her to shut up.
Oh my god, I did not know this was a thing.
Apparently I'm
Changes
bad.
everything.
Healer show.
I need my Eos to stop doing things.
There's like
some now.
There's like thresholds too, and I don't know what they are, but I know if someone's like 80% and someone's like 5%, she'll prio the 5%. But it's like I forgot the exact numbers. It was really annoying to try to optimize.
I think she generally targets like the lower health people, and then if they're above like 80 or 90%, she won't target them at all.
I just accidentally summoned my fairy in game and realized that the game audio is not muted.
Yeah, I saw your chat blowing up. But the real question is, was it Celine or Eos?
It was Eos. I don't know. Celine's not even on my hover anymore. It's just like
What?
bum bloat.
I use Celine.
It's messed up.
That was funny.
Oh, you're gonna.
Oh, it
you're gonna
does
piss
work on
someone off by
Seraph.
saying that.
Oh my god, it does work on Seraph. This actually like fixes it. I'm kind of scared too though, because I'm gonna forget to turn it back on.
I mean, this just
People
means
are
two
gonna
more.
notice.
This just
Mid
means 2
pull.
more buttons for the Scholar Pop bar.
It's actually, yeah. I mean, that's actually doesn't the you just click it. You just click it. It's your controller player, I guess. I guess it's more. It's rough.
Just buy a mouse and click it with your feet.
True. Foot pedal.
I actually have the hotbar space on, ironically, because my bars are still set up for Heaven's Word. Like, the size of them, the amount of space is still there.
Well,
Got
you
space.
probably have like 6 dot buttons that don't need to be in there anymore, then, right? Because they took them all away.
I still don't have anything bound to the Shadow Flare hotkey from way back when.
But rather than me having fairy autos, I think Constellation should just overwrite the Seraph's Embrace.
I guess before
Just
we
make them 2 different shields.
Easy, yeah.
Oh, that could work. Before we get into like a little bit more off-topic, I guess, questions. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you guys would want to talk about?
I remember we were talking about like what we want to change for balance, and this isn't really to balance them, but I kind of want what is it, Fey Blessing on 2 charges. Just for no like particular reason, I just like would really like it. It sounds really cool. It would like make it more comparable to Numa, as much as like someone might not want it to be homogenized.
I think charges are pretty good when it comes to healing abilities specifically, just because it adds more versatility to them.
Yeah, because 2 Fey Blessings in a row is just a Numa potency at that point.
You can
If
have
you-
your
assuming you
extra
don't
Fey
go-
blessing, but only if we remove the regen on soil.
Oof. All right, take it back.
Take it back right now. Scholar can't get more HPS. It's already too good at the other thing is good at.
I think I'd take that.
Really?
I'm not a scholar. I'm just fucking Astro. Don't listen.
Oh, you're losing 600, like soil is 600 potency in 30 seconds. You'd be losing that for an extra 300 potency every 60. Oh, it'd be crazy.
Yeah, but it's not an Aetherflow.
I agree, just because I like the idea of the fairy doing more stuff, because that's like the scholar's thing, and summoner has kind of been removed as a pet class. Let's be honest. So more things for the fairy to do, and I think would be pretty cool. Even if, and obviously, I hope they also eventually fix all the jank with it.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we talked about this specifically, but did you guys consider Dragonsong Reprise Ultimate challenging to you? Did you find it maybe too easy or too hard?
I think regardless of what class you played, like what role you played, it was definitely challenging for sure.
You think it gave enough challenge for an ultimate?
Yeah.
Yeah, hardest one they've ever made, for sure.
For healer
Hands down.
specifically, or
Just to execute, I'm not too sure about healing yet.
In terms of healing, it's like I think the first the first 2 phases at T is definitely harder to heal. But that's only like 5 minutes, right, of a fight, and then the rest of it is like you like don't have to heal like hardly anything anymore after that,
Yeah.
right? Whereas at least this fight is like some stuff throughout. I think the first part of T is harder to heal, but that's only for a little bit.
You get so much practice with it as well because it's the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if most would agree with me here, but I think the biggest enemy as a healer is auto attacks, and this fight didn't really have any threatening ones.
No auto attack. Then not only not any threatening ones, also just barely any of them at all.
The last boss wasn't even auto.
The regular Thornton, he auto attacks like once, maybe
As-
twice.
you guys remember the auto attacks after flattens and like the ones after like right before death sentences and stuff? Like those killed tanks because they didn't
Yeah.
get topped back off. But like this one, you survive the 3 slashes. That's it. You don't need to worry about like an auto attack after anything like killing them. So
Even
yeah,
I mean, even golden while you're doing the Exaflare movements. I mean, you would just faint the autos.
yeah. Golden.
Like, remember the final living liquid baits with a hand tank just getting
Ooh.
clobbered, and then you got like BJCC. I mean, that whole phase, you're looking at the tanks while you're doing all these mechanics, and yeah,
Mhm.
now that you mentioned it, that definitely was not in this fight. I would say. Eathog's autos were like, I'm autoing, because like the whole ground freaking shakes when he does it. And it's like, of course you're paying attention.
But you left that effect on. I couldn't stand that.
Thor does the same thing when he swipes. The screen shakes. It's like
It's really violent.
yeah.
Like, I'm looking
Man,
at my hotbar and my screen is just rumbling up and down.
I don't think I've ever done that before. It's always been
Speaking
like
of Thornton, man, as a bard, there's one thing I'm really jealous of White Mage about in Thornton. They get to hear him do the random yelling probably more often than any of the other healers with
Yeah.
the misery.
how does that work?
It's damage. Like if you do really high damage, he has a chance of going what or oh.
Is that how it is?
Yeah, it's big damage hits. But so
Yep.
White Mage misery gets it pretty frequently.
No way.
That's awesome.
That's actually makes sense because I was playing Monk the other day and like it kept doing it like every other GCD and it was actually really annoying. Yeah. it
Ninja
was-
has to deal with it a lot. What? And he can interrupt his own voice lines.
Yeah.
Too. He can be like, "This is the power of what?"
yeah, that's really weird. Never knew that. So actually, speaking of going to Bahamut, this is basically for healers specifically, at least. Maybe not other people, but I would say this is a pretty upgraded Golden Bahamut in terms of healing. Auto attacks, of course, very lackluster, but overall, I feel like there's way more pressure on the pure healer this time. Whereas in Golden, I mean, as a pure healer, you're pretty much just healing the tanks, and even then, you're involving 2 of them anyway, so you're only responsible for like 1 and 4, I think, back in the day, or 2 and what was it? 2 and 4 back in the day.
2 and 4, yeah.
Because now people do 1 and 4, but yeah, basically only healing 2 Akmorns as a pure healer. But this one, I mean, your responsibility, survive Akmorns, and then pure healer specifically had a responsibility of topping up between the Gigaflare hits, because I mean, a shield healer, unless you're Sage using Numa, I mean, there's realistically no way you're going to be able to solo heal between Gigaflare hits. The shield healer.
The most you get is like Fey Blessing, Indom, Swift Cast.
Yeah.
Swift Cast, emergency tactics maybe if you're really good at your precasting. But besides that, it's like that's not much.
Yeah.
That Indom you specifically only get before the last hit if you've used it in Akmorn, or Akmorn.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was a thing actually in our first clear. Our first clear, we got to ask first Giga when we cleared, and I think I soiled like 2 or 3 GCDs later than normal on the second Akmorn, and it wasn't up until like the very last hit of Gigaflare. That was really scary. The timing on some of your 30-second abilities is very tight in that phase. Yeah, I mean, how did you guys feel about that phase? Is it like, did you guys think it was well designed, favorite healing phase in the game?
I think it's awesome because the way that it's like a mix of mitigation checks as well as like a lot of throughput means all the healers like really get their own chances to shine.
It's also
Really
really
nice.
nice on the tanks. From what I've heard, I've not done it as a tank yet, but because they have like shirtless evokes and swaps for every 30 seconds, right? For autos. It seems kind of, and like the movement if you're positioning for the Exa flares.
Oh, that looks really fun. That looks like really old school actual like tank swaps.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in a while.
There's like a lot of little nuances to it too that seem interesting.
I think the thing about last phase too is that very well designed, because it's kind of not debating you, but it's forcing you to go into the phase with practically nothing up mitigation wise. Like you're pretty much, you know, empty on tools because you're using it for the transition. So you have to somehow come up with a plan to deal with the first Akmorn and Gigaflare with very minimal cooldowns. I think that also adds a little bit of flavor to it.
I thought that was awesome. It's
Yeah.
like your mitigation plan starts at the transition, not like at the first mechanic.
Yeah.
Like it's part of the mitigation plan. It's very relevant.
Yeah, they kind of did that with the tanks too, right? Like they forced them to use their invulns at the end, so you can never use them on the final phase. Might have been deliberate.
There are clips floating around of people finding ways to get past Cauterize without invulns. So they're I don't know if I can find it and post it somewhere, but it's a clip of them invulning one of the Akmorns in final phase while the other tank still has like 60 seconds left on their cooldown, and it's quite interesting. I'm not sure.
Ways to do it.
Yeah.
There's a way that you can consistently get one invuln in the last phase, and there's RNG ways to get both of them.
So
Pretty cool.
RNG.
The RNG way is that on the second Great Worm's Breath, if it's the double tank stack one, since it hits slightly less hard, you can get away with just not using any cooldowns, and then you can use every cooldown on the Cauterize and live it normally.
So you can still, if I read the timeline for that right, you can actually pre-pop your Nebula, your 30% as tank for that buster and still catch the Cauterize. So you can actually have that for either buster.
Ooh.
And then you could still kitchen sink the Cauterize.
That's just what I heard. I didn't see it. That's just what someone told me they did.
I looked at this as soon as I saw that clip because I was like, this is interesting. How the fuck do they do this?
Yeah,
Right,
I've
like,
seen,
that's so
I've seen a bit
curious.
of that too. Where essentially they treat the cauterize like they do the Nidhogg tether, where you just need every single thing, so it's just a ton of defensives. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can definitely live it with every cooldown. It's just the challenge is just getting there with every cooldown and not dying to everything before it, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of tank damage. The Akmorns,
And,
the random chance between the wind or the stack. Yeah, it's rough.
And you can have you can consistently get at least one invuln by having one tank provoke the other boss with the second Orm's Breath, so that he's like has aggro on both, right? And then you hit the tanks with the tethers, and then that one tank invulns both autos, and then the tanks will have the debuffs, so the other one will still have his invuln.
Yeah, I mean, keeping that relevant to healing, I mean, that's going to make healing the last phase significantly easier, especially if you can do it for like first and second, because that means you're solo stacking one with a tank, and then another one takes one, then you have a 6-stack party on one side. I just almost...
Can you 6-stack?
Yeah, that's what they did.
That's what they did in the clip.
Yeah. The little orbs are definitely just suggestions and not like
Really?
15 people.
Oh, that actually is surprising. That I hadn't seen. I'd only seen Surviving the Cauterize.
Yeah, they did like 15k a hit instead of 37k. It was...
Oh my
It's
god.
in
Oh
the
my
group
god.
chat.
Yeah,
Yeah, they literally have Reprisal and Addle on it, and they do like one healing GCD each, and it's not even like close.
yeah, it's
Goodness.
they definitely kills the healing on that part. So that's interesting if you can actually
Oh,
make
their
a...
ass side weakness even, Jesus.
if you can make a consistent strat, it's definitely very
That would
strong.
be really nice. That would be really nice for the second one. The
Yeah.
second Alchemorn's pretty rough because like all your 2 minutes aren't up.
Yeah, so you could do that. What you could do too is you can guarantee both invulns. We had like a long debate about what like the good play would be, even if you had both invulns. It's like you can have each tank invuln the party tower, and then the party just stack full 6, and you don't have to think about the tanks at all. I don't know if that like helps. And then the tanks can actually
That's
just
so
pop all their
nuts.
majors for 1 and 3. And
I already don't heal the tanks. I don't know about you.
Which
sometimes they get low, and it's scary, and I'm not sure why.
I just ignore them. They're fine.
Yeah.
The only time for me on that phase is between, I think, the Exaflare Trinity, because there's like no AoE healing there. Like, all right, I'll give him a little love before the next 2 Trinities.
Yeah, I don't think I heard you. Did you have a input on how you felt about Final Phase?
I said, I was thinking I'm gonna enjoy Final Phase a whole lot more when I get rid of the jitters. I'm still super jittery in that phase. I don't feel like I had very many pulls.
There was,
and I mean,
Is it just like, please? I just want the reclear. I just want the.
I mean, I got so jittery that I needed a reminder from Ara about precasting Sucker for the AoE still, because I was literally just shaking on the mechanics because it was just so late into the fight. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nerves got to me, but it's getting better. The reclear was much more comfy.
We're in like last phase. Did anyone else wipe because of an out into Akmorns or?
Once before, that was just when we realized the range, right?
Yeah,
we realized heals
Yeah,
weren't hitting
Kinda
both
wiped there
groups.
too.
We're talking about healing. That is such like a messed up thing to do.
Same for
Apparently,
Gigaflare though. I mean, the end Gigaflare is significantly harder than out in terms of like how much damage it does.
I feel like it does the
Think so?
same.
It feels like the same to me.
Does the same
I
to me,
think it does a little bit more. Maybe not
Maybe a
much.
little more, but it feels the same being like at the very edge of inside his hitbox as it does being like at the wall. At the
Well,
very
Yeah.
I think it's because I mean I think it really just depends. I don't know actually. I'd look at that. It feels like it does more, but
no,
I
it
think
feels-
our takeaway was that the proxy like had a hard fall off after like 2 or 3 steps into the hitbox, because otherwise it would be like really weird that they could just give you that harder hitting Gigaflare for like no reason randomly.
yeah.
we've had
It's
people
definitely,
take 2 steps in and they just die.
Yeah, like the
I
damage
like
difference is
Titan
just
then,
much
yeah,
bigger.
where like it
It's
has like
definitely
that.
there's a very high fall off where there's a lot of times where we'll all be like mostly together and everyone will take like 80% of their health ish, and there'll be one guy who's like just a little bit closer and he just gets absolutely ass blasted.
That's the way to put it. Yeah. Did you guys have a specific Akmorn that you think was hard to heal because like maybe like your comp, like because you said you had trouble hitting the second Akmorn, like with White Mage, Lily Bell there kind of makes it significantly easier.
It doesn't trigger on every hit. That's the only issue with it. Otherwise, it would be way better.
Well, I'm just saying from my experience, like we have deploy Lily Bell for that, and then it pretty much just heals that for us, where we do GCD heals, but it's not like, I don't think we ever wiped a second Hawkmourne. That was like the first one I think if we have issues during prog or whatever. Is there like one comp maybe like Astrologian struggled with more?
No, okay.
Astro is really good at Hawkmourne. It's only like a little bit. It's like White Mage is better at Giga Flare and Astro is better at Hawkmourne because Neutral Sect is absolutely disgusting when you can just stand there and spam heals. So Neutral Sect basically like absolutely carries the first and third one for me, and then on the second one you have Star. I always pre-prep a horoscope, and you also have macro that you can hit near the end for the instant top, so it's pretty comfortable.
What about you guys have any issues with go ahead, sorry.
No, sorry, that second Hawkmourne with macro, that's where I put it too. It feels so good because like everyone's sitting at like 20%, you know this next Hawkmourne's about to kill him, and then you just hit the button, everyone's topped. The last two
It's fast, dude. It feels so good.
So fast. Sorry, go ahead, Momo.
I was gonna say, did you guys have any issues with the last one? I feel like the last one's probably the easiest one to heal in terms of mitigation, because I think we had 80% up at that point.
Yeah, you just have all these cooldowns coming back up generally. 2 minutes from the first.
Usually we'd like do a list of like what goes where, but our last call is just everything you got. It's like that, there's nothing after this, just whatever mitt, put it up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the third one is like easy or anything, but it's definitely like not any harder than the second one. The first one's easy because you have like all these cooldowns that you're using that you'll want it to be back up for the third one, right? I think I told Remy, just don't even like do anything on the first one. Like I'll literally just press neutral sect like 2 times and we're fine because of all these cooldowns. And the second one is kind of hard because you're missing a few cooldowns, and the third one's hard because it just goes on for so long.
Yep. Wait, so I thought I heard somebody earlier say they use macro for Giga Flare instead of Hawkmourne. Was that Pulse?
Oh, that was me. Hi.
Cool.
Okay.
I thought it was quite good on there, personally. Because I would have light speed for the first Giga Flare and then macro for the second to third hit of the second Giga Flare, and I thought that was pretty good. I don't think we struggled as much with the healing. I think we moved an Addle off the second to the third Hawkmourne at some point or something.
I think we moved it.
Or moved off a Giga Flare.
Yeah, I think we moved it off a Giga Flare and to an Hawkmourne, and it made it way comfier.
And yeah, that was just really comfy at that point.
Yeah, macro for Giga Flare sounds also really strong. Seems like it's
that
macro just in general way more versatile than Lilibell in that phase.
Just my favorite button they put in this game by far. I love hitting it.
Yeah, Momo, you said you deployed the second Hawkmourne. We just deployed the Giga Flare, the first hit. So the first one does almost nothing, and then you take the second one and just a macro to tops you, and you're basically good. So
yeah, our heal plan was. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. That was our second Giga Flare. Is just like a lot of just not taking damage from it or just immediately getting healed from it. So,
yeah, our heal plan for Giga Flare was Constellation Soil first one and Expedient second one, and we deployed Hawkmourne. So I think that's probably why we didn't use too much there, because I think the second Hawkmourne in our comp had only Reprisal Addle, and that was it. With Soil. I think that's why we used it there. Honestly, deploying the second Giga Flare, even actually the first one probably be really good too. Let's back up.
We souped up a deploy for the second Giga Flare, and the first one's Expedient Constellation.
Yeah, same.
And Barrier.
Yeah. Can you get you'd have to like time it really well, I feel, to get it for the first one. First Giga Flare.
To do what now?
To deploy first Giga Flare, you'd have to.
Yeah, no, we don't. Oh, that's why it's on second.
Yeah,
Probably could too, but yeah, I don't know.
Because the first Giga hits at 1 minute exactly, and the last one hits at 108. So it'd be really tight. Yeah, you'd have to swift it too.
Did anyone else here like plan around a third Giga Flare that didn't end up happening?
Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm in your team.
That's you're in my group.
Alright.
I'm so convinced that if you somehow get tank invuln into the last phase, I bet you can invuln 2 the Mourn of Fuzz and extend the enrage.
I've been saying this for how long? I don't know if anyone's tested it though.
That's actually what I said too.
Because when we saw it, that's what I thought right away. Because it seems so weird to have this like the sacking system for this enrage that only gives you like 4 seconds.
Yeah,
Extra
like,
seconds, right? It seems weird.
It's 3-3, and you end up with this odd number, and it's got to be something, right?
It's very different from the usual enrage like sequences that we got in Ultimates.
It's just
it's not that unlike Golden, but Golden at least pops you, 1 at a time and not 3 at a time when there's only 8 of you.
You don't know how happy I am someone else is thinking this.
That'd be really interesting, actually. You just have like the group go south, and then tanks take, northeast, northwest, and then just like it's like a domino. I guess keeps setting them in like a. That'd be really interesting.
I bet it goes through invuln.
Yeah,
but
it's
still,
gotta
like,
go.
It probably
it does.
does.
Oh yeah.
I could also see a world where it doesn't, and you get like 10 extra seconds.
This is Mr. Ozma. He definitely knows that someone would try that.
Maybe it was planned to let you do that, and they just.
I feel like Warrior should be able to have their home gang back up by then, even if they're using Uncauterize without the like shenanigans. But I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
Someone with a warrior go test.
Actually, yeah, you're probably right, because Cauterize is like the final phase is what, 340? So yeah, home gang actually would be back up.
Somebody told me if you home gang for the first trio, the Holy Blade Dance, if you use home gang on that, somebody told me it barely comes back up in time for Nidhogg tethers if you like delay the kill.
Interesting.
Do you guys ever delay kill times for healing purposes?
Oh yeah.
Mitigation
reason not
purposes
to.
at the very
There's no
least.
reason not to, yeah.
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 Yeah, might as well hold them.
I like the guy in chat who just says, "What if your healer will be in between the enrage hits, and you just extend it that way?"
There's this
You
one
get
part.
2 extra seconds.
That's scary. They're gonna get back up and everyone's gonna be standing where it's gonna hit. I don't think Resin Volt's gonna work on that.
I guess that's one way to test it. If Resin Vuln doesn't work, then Tank Invuln isn't going to work either, right?
I wonder if you, instead of making the healers go first, just popping reses on the people who go first.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
It's not worth it. Just kill it. Please just kill the boss before you have to think about this stuff.
I kind of want.
What were you going to say, Momo?
I was saying in our group for reclears, people started doing more damage during Thornton specifically, and there's a very important deep play for Nidhogg transition that is very, very tight, because we kill like sometimes like right before the first swing, which is like 257 or 258, and it's like if your deploy is like at all too late, it's not back up, you just wipe. Like that kind of situation probably never happened, right, in Prague?
No.
I don't
maybe.
think.
I think there's one time where it was like, I mean, we obviously wouldn't kill the bosses early, right? But
Yeah.
it's not, we might kill it like a few seconds earlier than normal, and you'll be like, it's whatever, it's a few seconds. And then there was one time where there was a cooldown that wasn't up for a Nidhogg stack, and we wiped to it. And I'm like, all right, let the old man cast his cast bar.
Mostly, I think I was annoyed by Soil not coming up for the first stack. Like sitting there watching the cast bar for Lash and Nash and spamming the Soil button and waiting for it to go up was the most annoying shit. And I was like, please just hold for Soil.
It's
Or at least let me. That was more about like me putting it down at the right boss percent, so that it would come up. But yeah, I wasn't looking at the boss's HP.
So we did have not quite that. When we were still progging dragons, we would kill Thornton 2 quite fast, and then our 2 minutes would not be like up until basically we were mid ice fire tethers. So then we 2-minute burst after we got back in from like the vow and everything, and that's during the Hand of Pain. So we have 2-minute burst popping off during this like 2% Hand of Pain, and we like wiped through it. That happened at least once to us before we started holding, just so that we would burst ASAP instead of like them coming up much later and holding it forever long. I think we like lost the Rampart not holding as well, but I don't remember it.
There's a very similar spot with Soil in Dragon's Phase 2, where if you Soil, I think late for the if you solo late for the Wrath of Flames Akmorin, it comes up at a very scary time right before the second Akafa. I think there was like a point during Prague where I didn't even do a GC, I just spammed my solo keybind until it went off. There's a couple moments for solo in that fight. Yeah, there's also the one during Death of the Heavens too. I don't know about you, but I also solo, because if you solo the center of the arena, it'll last for the fire knockback.
Yeah, I didn't solo that. But yeah, I
No.
gotcha.
And that
Yeah, we were doing Seraph there, so I didn't have to.
yeah, we just soil and sucker shields, and that was it. So basically, what happened is like if you place a soul too late, it would come up like right before the Ancient Quagga, I think is what it's called, which was also really scary. So there's like a couple moments during that fight, so it's kind of annoying.
How about first Akmorn into first Meteors? Anyone?
It's kind of a thing you can do
Yeah.
with soils in general, because it's a 30-second cooldown and it lasts for 15 seconds, right? So there's a lot of mechanics in the game where you can kind of like weasel your way into getting an extra one like that. It's a pretty nice move if you're creative with it.
I guess that's a minor boon to Sage. I feel like Carachol is much easier to use in that regard. Even though it's the same cooldown, it's like just much easier to get it out because you don't have to worry about people stacking up beforehand.
Yeah, it's definitely much easier to use, but the soil range buff they did right before this came out definitely helped a lot too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that and the Cure 3 buff.
Yeah, Cure 3,
right.
you can use Cure 3 during Akmorns, can't you? If everyone steps in a little bit.
More than a little bit. They have to kind of.
It's so
See anybody
scary
on
for
the
no
very
reason.
I
front
would
of the
not play
circle.
that game.
Yeah.
That sounds spook.
Somebody out there is playing that game.
I've definitely seen point of views where like the healer is just in, and I'm
People are
just
doing
like,
it.
they're how are they in that? Because it's not like the little circle with the swirlies around that you have to be in, which is like deceptive. It's just the center of it. You can be like quite deep in and still get
See.
hit, but like
The
it's
hitbox
just so
is huge.
scary.
See, I was baited by the swirlies. I thought it was a lot smaller than it actually was.
I thought the same too, yeah.
There was
Yeah.
actually one time where we were at the enrage part, and I was going like to go take the first Morn of Fall, I think that's what it's called, and someone got hit by mine like in the middle of the boss almost. They're like, what? The hitbox is so huge for these things. So I imagine you could probably get way closer than it looks. I imagine on Awkward still be fun.
I think the Aquarn's smaller than the Morna Falls. Maybe I'm just like hallucinating, but yeah, they're definitely. I've seen people just be really in, and it scares me. But they're just okay.
Yeah, like we saw someone doing that, and I was like, we're not doing that. There's like no reason to, because I mean, really, the only one you really need to cure 3 is the second one. I feel first one you have plenary for, and then the third one just doesn't really require that kind of healing. Plus, you just use the rest of your raptures anyways, so it's just like not too bad. And it's just a risk for no reason. It's not. I don't think they're that bad to heal without cure 3.
200 potency though.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like the second one was like would be the big one. You would utilize that.
That's like 10%, 8% more healing.
Hard though, because most of it will be overhealing, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not saying. I'm saying that it's very small. I'm not suggesting that it's large. Very small difference.
I guess if we're done talking about it, we're about 2 hours in, almost 2 hours in, which was the minimum estimated time. But if you want to go through some of these questions real quick, we can kind of bust them out. There's like 3 or 4 questions that would be interesting to answer. So this question is called, with current job and redesign, Square Enix seems to have backed themselves up to a corner where, in their opinion, healing Savage Week 1 or Ultimate on release is one of the absolute hardest jobs with the most responsibility. But by the time you clear and have fights on farm, it becomes significantly easier thanks to having the healing and mitigation requirements memorized and having stronger heals and more HP due to gear and inflation. DPS, however, do the same rotation I'm in eye level as I do best in slot and in speedruns. People talk about just add more DPS buttons all the time, but how does SE fix healers to make them as enjoyable beyond prog?
Can I just say from the DPS perspective, that is not true. We do the same rotation because we end up killing the boss faster, and you always have to spend that 1 week trying to figure out where we want to move all the 2 minutes and everything. And a lot of jobs don't handle that very well this expansion. So just my 2 cents in that one.
I think they kind of said it, but I mean, the simplest solution is just have a healer rotation, even if it's just basic, and not just one nuke, one dot.
You think it's necessary?
They're not doing that. I don't know if it's necessary, but I think that was like a solution.
Mm-hmm. I think
That was a bad question for me because I just like healing, and I'll probably play it regardless. Like even in farm, like it doesn't really get boring for me.
Oh, really? That's actually really interesting. I think that's like a very rare opinion. Can you like elaborate, like maybe a bit more, like even in farm you don't get bored at all?
Wait, so the rare opinion is that he likes playing healer?
No.
He likes it the way it is, I'd say is the rare.
You said, well, you said you had fun healing farm, right?
Yeah.
Even when there's like P1S and like P2, when there's like nothing to really heal.
Yeah, I mean, you just go in there and get the clear.
Okay. No, I mean, I was just curious.
I get the frustration though, because like when you're on farm and the DPS are dying to stuff because they're like trying to get the extra, and then you know who pays the price, right? The healer does. But I don't know. I don't mind it too much.
Okay, apparently chat's flaming me. Listen, the only reason I asked is because like I that's such a rare, like nobody says that, so I was curious. Okay.
I mean, I'm maybe not that emphatically in that direction of like really liking it, but I definitely still enjoy farm. Just as long as it's like I don't enjoy speedruns the same way Ara does. But like just farming for the sake of getting clears, it's still a lot of fun. I like recovery. I like when people are greeting and I can practice recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes healing fun.
So
sorry.
Yeah,
because that like makes it so you're not just hitting the broil button until your next dot the entire time. Doing something that makes it feel like you're doing your role, I guess, is just...
Here's an example. I get a little bit of brain chemicals every time someone messes up in Temperance and we don't die because I was efficiently OG City healing to top us up in between the AoEs and P1. Like during Intemperance. Like most people will let the raid drop super low because the idea is no one's going to mess up Intemperance. But you can fix that with minimal loss and still live if somebody messes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it. I think that's fun. Optimizing safety, so to speak.
I guess when I think of farm, I think of like perfect play, which I guess that's more speed kills, but yeah, like farm where people mess up is fun. I mean party fighter in general, that kind of stuff is like always, that's like really fun to heal. When I think of farm, I guess I think of like a static environment where nothing goes wrong.
So, I'm like the opposite. I really like healing in my groups with like people that I know and like cooldowns that I can move around and ask for things for. I hate healing pugs. I can't stand it.
Really?
It's a disaster.
I think it's a mentality thing more than anything. It's like when I go into pugs, I expect them to fuck up, right? When I'm doing my static stuff, it's like, yeah, I expect them to not. So like, I guess it's more fun. Just like, I expect to recover mistakes, and recovering mistakes on healers, I think it's fun.
I think it's more so just because a lot of pugs just won't even attempt to use any of their mitigation cooldowns like at all, and that's
true.
And it makes me feel like I'm being actively attacked rather than helping use mistakes.
P2S flow 3. Oh my god! So don't even press tank LV half the time. You melee burned it sometime before.
No, that's definitely not fun for sure. Like when you're being into mitigation cooldowns, that's no good.
When people are getting hit, it's like, you know, you're helping them, but when they're just not even like trying to do anything, it just makes you feel like you're the bitch, you know.
I mean, as a healer, is kind of
that's
kind of
that's
our
your
place.
job, right?
Yeah.
It just makes you feel bad when people don't even like try. You know, at least try. Come on.
What about a paladin casting clemency? Do you get mad? Do you just like look at them and smile?
I mean, it depends how much damage he's doing. If I'm doing more damage than him, then go nuts, dude.
Well, you might not have been before the clemency, but after, you've definitely got the edge.
Yeah. Okay, so this next question is, we finally seem to have entered a sort of golden era of job balance between the various healer jobs. With the White Mage buffs, Astral Illusion and White Mage are both solid, and Sage and Scholar have both been great this entire expansion, even going so far as to be great together with double shield healer. Where do you wish the jobs would go from here in 7.0, and is it if it's different, where do you think SE will take them? Another loaded question.
Oh yeah.
But the question is too hard for me. I'm not smart enough.
But like, yeah, go. Okay, go.
I like what they did with the new like unique abilities they added. I want more of that, but I'm also asking for the impossible thing to keep them also balanced. But I like new stuff and like unique utility, like how macro heals, how expedient works. So more of that, more unique stuff, but try to keep it balanced. I know that's like impossible, but that's the dream.
Yeah, I agree. This is like something being said from someone who like would not. I don't care if I have to switch from playing one job to the other. They're kind of just both tools in my kit, I guess. But it wouldn't work so well for someone who's like only a scholar or only a sage. I do like having just the unique abilities that you can give the job its own identity and maybe its own strengths.
Yeah. One thing I actually want to see them. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I wasn't.
You're the actual healer. You should speak first.
I was just gonna say, my only opinion is that I prefer new fun stuff over them being strictly balanced. I'd rather they be different and have one be a little better than have them be exactly the same. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't mind meta shifts and swings between strengths. It's kind of cool to see White Mage come back into prominence with the Misery buff and the 20-second release. So I like.
It's always going to be the best, right? So.
Yeah.
I want to see them double down on the damage and healing aspects. We saw a little bit more of it in this expansion with things like Macrocosmos and Numa, but I like when they kind of understand that every GCD healers consider their damage is kind of a consideration as well. So seeing more healing tools that are damage neutral on the global cooldown, I think I don't know, I feel like it lets them do more things, lets you make a decision with your global cooldown that it's in benefit in both ways. So I'd like to see them try to make more interesting decisions around that.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think really hope in 7.0 they really emphasize upon the fairy or Seraph. I think it's so ridiculous how Seraph is just a copy of the fairy. Like I really think Whispering Dawn and Fey Illumination should be stronger when used under it. I feel like that would add so much variety in how you would use it outside using it for constellation. And things like I know this will never happen either, but Astral Illusion being more time based again, dude. God.
They got a little bit of that.
Yeah, Exaltation and Macro definitely have that old Stormblood feel, but more of that would be really nice.
You want time dilation with the buff extension.
I think that was such a cool aspect of it.
It was really cool.
Like there is no other healing job in the game that felt good to use like that.
Your social opposition would like extend sprints and would extend your like Eureka actions too.
Yeah.
If you use them in there.
Only your sprint, not other sprints.
Yeah. It also extends your food and pot, I'm pretty sure.
I liked having 2 extra minutes of food.
Yeah.
True.
That's OP.
Like that kind of gameplay was like really interesting and fun to like play around, just healing wise. Right, like extending regens on tanks, like CUing, you know, dropping a CU, dropping aspect of benefit, and then time dilating that plus a CO. Like that was like a 43-second aspect of benefit and like a 37 CU. If I remember correctly.
It was to the point where it was actually a gain to do stuff like that instead of extending a balance for 15 more seconds, single target. It's like, no, extending these regions actually saves me a bunch of GCDs.
That was back in the day too when tank autos like Final Omega destroyed UCOP 2, like nail autos. Crazy amount of damage back then, because that was a different era of tanking too, because tank stance wasn't integrated into your toolkit. It was something you had to click or use.
Oh man. Every time someone says Omega, I just think about the speed kills where you just have the party soak every single tank buster in the whole fight. Oh, that was fun to
go. That's an idea.
This one's actually...
It used to be a thing.
I know it was. It's still an idea.
Fun. Oh, man. It's fun.
Oops. So this question is more oriented here towards you guys. How do you approach healing the world race any differently from all of us normal proggers? What mental or gameplay changes do you make, or or are all the differences really more related to the water race mentally, not healer specific? Jesus Christ, I can't speak.
I don't think there's that much of a difference as much as people might make it out to be.
Probably not.
Definitely not thinking about damage optimization till very late. So things like having a good supply of ethers in case it's an endurance fight, or that you have to do a lot of raising, stuff like that. And as a shield healer, like obviously prog healing, this should be everyone though. Like you just have shields on everything, right? You just shield fell off, put new shield up. Like when you're in new prog phases, when you're learning for the first time. Space out your cooldowns and just try to keep something up when you're in a blind phase, or just super mitigate if you think a rig wight's coming. I don't know. There's not a whole lot. It's gonna be mind blowing there, you know.
Yeah.
Don't Swift.
Don't Swift, yes. No Swift broils, no Swift glares.
I think this might be a good example of something you kind of go out of your way to do differently. Death of the Heavens. The Earthquake won't kill you if you're mitigated and topped enough, which would let you see, what is it, the chains well enough, even if the person is like not at all in the correct spot. If you see all the chains appear with all 8 people, even if the person got hit, that's information, right? That lets you see that there's 2 dooms tethered to each other, which is extremely important. So going out of your way to just make sure people live things is very good.
The only thing that I would say that my group did much differently that I would consider much different than just like normal play is once you're killing the boss, like the phase, if what you're doing is good enough to kill the boss, stop changing things. Just do it every time. Right. That's the mentality that we had, at least. No extra GCDs, no nothing. If it's good enough to kill the boss like every time, stop changing things.
Yep.
Just do it every time.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good one, because I mean that's you killing the boss differently at times can change potential cooldown usages, right? So
yeah, even killing it faster. But like the thing is that a lot of people, like most people, they'll be doing a phase and they'll be comfortable with it, and they'll start like trying to get doing their rotation perfect and all that, in like most regular groups. But when you're trying to clear very, very fast, if you're killing the boss, then there's not really much benefit to that, right? So no reason to change anything.
Talking to you, all those people that try to squeeze that last GCD in before pyro, or when you have the back arrow on elusive.
Yeah, exactly. Stop it. If you're killing the boss, then just do the exact same thing every time. If it's good enough, then it's good enough.
actually, about holding Swift, there's actually a good argument in this fight specifically. There's like 3 mechanics where we actually precast Swift in case somebody dies, and that's for if you precast Swift during Sanctity, for example, and somebody dies to like an orb, you can raise them fast enough to where they're back up just in time for the meteor baits. And the same thing for I think it's Wrath of the Heaven or Wrath of the Ward. If you precast Swift and somebody dies like the Earthquake or the the Lion AoE or whatever, the Concealed, they can get back up in time to go to the stack. So like those there's arguments to be made about this fight specifically that I don't think exist in other ultimates, at least too much, that precasting Swift in case somebody dies is very beneficial.
That is definitely a thing. There are some mechanics where you have to raise instantly for them to be up in time for the rest of the mechanic. But I do that too, where if I hear someone during the first trio, Strength of the Ward, like how the 3 Dragoons come down for the dive bomb.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear anything in voice at all, I will press Swift cast and I'll look at who's about to die. If they get hit by that dive bomb, how their body like slides off into like Egypt or whatever.
Yeah.
And then their corpse gets a concealed Ascalon's Mercy. If you precast Swift, you can raise them as they're sliding across the room past you and get them up faster.
Amazing.
It's awesome. Yeah, it feels really good.
It's the same in Def too, where somebody dies to like Earthquake to dive, you raise them fast enough to where they're up for the chains. It's like that kind of stuff is like that saves so much time if you can get it off in time, especially for like Death of the Heavens, right? That's 10 minutes in. They have a pull there. I think it's super valuable.
See, it's funny. You're talking about a good use for this, but we always just, when we decided that, after some polls, maybe sometimes you stop taking the polls a little like seriously enough and people start joking around. If there's a mechanic that someone dies on a lot of polls in a row, somebody just says in advance, I'll get the res. And it's like trying to be toxic about it. Like, I'll get the res. It's fine. No one's even died yet. It's just trying to be toxic about it.
All right.
Sometimes that happens because we definitely had polls where two people like die in sequence, like one after the other on a mechanic, but every single raise in the party swift casted the first guy, so it's a wipe.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, I definitely stopped. I would like intentionally just not getting res if someone died at some points, just waiting. We have like a summoner, and utils would usually be very fast on it.
I think this next question's pretty good. What is something that we can do, or Square Enix can do, that can teach new raiders how to heal better? Why are you shaking your head?
You can't make people who don't want to press buttons. It doesn't matter. I'm of the opinion it doesn't matter what they do. If somebody is unwilling to improve, and this is of all aspects of the game, they just won't. It doesn't matter.
Okay, what if they want to learn? Because I mean, I think in 14 the healing is pretty different than a lot of other MMOs. It's more offensive based healing rather than reactive or defensive based. So you're kind of forced into this role where I'm going to heal, but you're supposed to be doing like, let's say on average like 80% damage GCDs instead of 80% healing GCDs, right? Like, how do you kind of teach a new player to the game that philosophy?
Fortunately, in the Hall of the Novice, it actually tells healers to DPS if they don't have to heal. It actually does. At level 15, the game says, if you find you're not healing, be sure to throw out some damaging abilities like we're teaching you in this little level 15 hall. And people just go, no, you're a healer. Don't do that. Well, they can't read. We're doomed.
Whenever I talk to someone who's like asking me something like this, what I always tell them is that you're not healing the thing that's hitting you now or just hit you. You're healing the next thing that's going to hit you, right? So if you just get hit by something and you're like at 10% HP, well, if nothing's going to hit you, right? The next thing that's going to hit you is what you're healing. So you don't have to always be topped necessarily. Unless you don't know what's coming, then you do have to always be topped.
That's the difference between blind and progging.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to think about, you're healing the next thing that's coming, and then once you get into that mentality, everything kind of falls into place with like overhealing and all that.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's why you see in every single endgame heal or eyes phase, it always ends with the party at like 10% HP just chilling, because we wait to top until everything's dead. There's nothing left.
I always like watching the early ultimate clears where the healers are they're on instinct and they are actually healing the last bit of damage. There's a golden clear. I think that it's like just an OST background. Like that's just, that's just a play for the OST, and they're healing after the last split. And it's just like, I don't know why. They just can't stop themselves sometimes.
Yeah. It was pretty common in Uwu too.
Yeah. Right before the Enrage cast.
Yeah, the primer alert.
A lot. I mean, that's at least the boss is not a hittable for a second there, so it's kind of reasonable. But
earlier, since you're talking about ARR content, that's definitely like something that was a little different earlier on, and the same with like old synced content. Is that back then, since OGCDs were barely a thing, like healing OGCDs, if you needed to top the party for a mechanic, you needed to start topping them like 10 seconds ago. So
yeah, I mean that, and back then too, MP was like a lot more hard to come by. It's just like, I don't think you could spam GCDs back then either, could you?
Good old ballad.
Yeah, definitely it was more of a thing.
So to kind of emphasize, I think most people say, hey, if you want to get better at healing, you'll party finder, right? You guys ever said that before?
If you never want to heal again, yeah, go on the party finder.
Well, I think healing party finder is probably, it's one of the better ways to teach you how to play more reactive, I guess.
Yeah.
It's definitely makes you better at watching other people while you're doing mechanics because you know they're getting, you have to watch out for that assassin running at you.
I mean, I think that's one of the most important things about healing in general. Is like I feel like to be like a really good healer, you kind of want to be aware of what's happening like on the field, right?
Yeah, you're one of the people in the party who is thinking the most ahead of time because right now you're just like pressing broil or whatever, right? What the hell are you doing? Start thinking about what everyone else is going to be doing, like on the next mechanic, right?
What about rescue? Do you guys ever use rescue in this prog?
I'm afraid of getting banned. Oh, in Prague. I thought you were going to say in Party Fight.
Yes. I think we saved the puller 2 on Wrath Flames by rescuing a pair together. Someone went the wrong way.
Oh, that was my favorite rescue. I was alone as the light color debuff, the white debuff, and my partner went the wrong way, and I rescued them through the bleed puddle. They died, but they soaked with me, and we didn't win. I felt really good about that.
There was a couple of really key rescue spots in this fight, and then there was one where before the first trio and normal Thornton, somebody died, right? You raise them, and if you die, you know you're not blue because the blue just goes to people who are alive. And you just have the healer that's in the stack. If there's a healer in the Thornton stack, just rescue them, and then they take the middle tower, and then the healer just flexes. Like there's really cool stuff like that. This ultimate that I don't think really existed too much in other ones.
There's I know that our healers pretty often, if somebody died on like the knights dashing around in the gazes with the dark knight hopping, they'd res them, and then if it was like tanks and healers were the prey, like they were the out one, they would just, it's just so the person doesn't get lost, because sometimes you get rezzed at the very start of meteors, you get kind of lost. They just rescue, like, no, this is who you're splitting your ice with. Tanks healers out, relax.
I think that rescue has killed more pulls than I've seen recovered in meteors, but
probably.
But it's still
Definitely, I have that experience too.
Yeah, I don't rescue at all unless it's for in the wrong spot.
You have to be very gun shy with rescue because you're more likely to disorient the person you're rescuing than you are to save them.
I
wanted.
Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say I wanted to during Dragon's phase, during the ice and fire tethers, like the first one at the start of the phase. Our strat we did involved DPS running both all the way to the north of the room as well as all the way to the south of the room. So and you don't get that much time really. So I was always really concerned about them doing that, and I thought, well, I could just if one of the DPS is messing it up, I could just rescue them to me across the room, right? But I wanted to do that rescue strats, but it ended up never happening, thankfully, because our DPS actually like never messed that mechanic up like ever.
That would be a strat.
I was just about to say that same mechanic. I did try to do a rescue to save because the DPS had messed it up. And I had the wrong person. I saw a tank targeted. And I accidentally rescued them onto both of us, and it just fucking wiped. But I was so embarrassed by that rescue that I actually just took it off my bar because it was like so late in the pull. And the DPS would have actually made it in time. We got the thing anyway, so it wasn't even needed. But that was
like the worst, yeah.
And then it was just like, all right, I'm not using this button.
I've done that before. It just makes you feel so bad.
It happens, yeah. It's just one of those things.
It happens though, for sure.
All right, this next question, I think we talked about a bit more too. It's just about how do you go about minimizing overhealing and maximizing damage and progression, especially towards the end where the clear pull is imminent. I think that's something that's, you guys kind of, talked about a little bit before how you guys don't really, you guys play more safe at the start, right? You don't really optimize too much.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, go on.
This goes with what Nar was. I think Nar said earlier, it applies here. It's like, if you're not wiping, don't change it. So minimizing overhealing is not really a factor if you're clearing a phase. So
yeah, even when you're getting to enrage in the final phase, you know how much more you can be doing. Usually, people are usually like, "Oh yeah, I definitely I didn't pot on my last burst. I didn't. My stuff was super delayed. I missed the burst entirely." You'll know it's not your healing damage that is going to be the difference. if you do the same thing and the other people push their stuff, like maybe you'll just get more comfortable and do more on your own anyway, without like necessarily optimizing healing damage. But
Comfort's very strong.
yeah,
That's definitely more of a savage question, I feel.
Well, for
So-
ultimate, it only really applies to. I feel like this question only applies to the last phase, right?
Mhm.
Because, like Nar said, if you're clearing a phase, just keep doing what you were doing.
Yeah, as long as you're utilizing your toolkit, getting proper usages of your abilities, it kind of lines up itself. Like there's going to be places where you play a bit safer. Like I still regen tanks on Thorn Phase for some of the Trinities because they get a little scary. But for the most part, as long as you keep your GCD rolling, like as long as you're not spamming Helios when everyone's at 100% and you keep your GCD rolling, it kind of falls into place for the most part.
I do that during the Horshafont transition, though.
Okay, well that's different. That check is like over halfway
Yeah.
through the phase, and you're like, oh, what do I do now?
It took me a while to realize Tulls was using neutral sect there, and it takes his shield first. And it took me a while to realize when I was using Sucker, I was getting nothing out of it because even the shield was still up because it was just taking his.
In terms of overhealing issues, like the question asked about, in relation to the last phase, I'm about to say something huge here, right? I think this is something people should really think about. The thing about overhealing is that dying to being underhealed is one of the worst things that can happen to your party, and that's because when you die to a healing issue, you are robbing all the other DPS and tank players in the party of their own practice on their own rotations. So even if you're overhealing a lot, just the fact that you're surviving every single time means everyone else in the party is getting more practice and doing more damage. So you definitely never, ever want to die to underhealing ever if you can help it. It cannot happen because that's damage you're taking from everyone else by taking their practice away.
That's a good one, yeah.
It's very good.
I've definitely raided with a few healers that go, I guess I could throw a sucker in there. Like it's a huge deal as that they have to do it. Yeah.
It's like the one broil that you're losing from like doing a sucker that you aren't really sure if you need to do or not. You're probably gaining back by consistently letting your DPS players like do their rotation more perfectly because they're getting more practice, right? So like in the end it evens out. At least in prog. In farm that doesn't always apply because by the time you're farming, a lot of people are already basically doing their rotation perfectly. Like that's the time for that kind of stuff. But in prog, you definitely can never ever underheal. Like it just can't happen. If you have to overheal for that to happen, then so be it.
Yeah, like you do not want someone to die to like damage variance because they weren't topped. And like, yeah, sure, maybe the Adel was missing, but you could just also heal, like give up 1 GCD and save 9 minutes. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a spicy question, if I may.
Okay, sure.
For all the other healers here, how do you all feel about the idea of deliberately eating double Steep Rage and Eyes Fade with mitigation to double up on the damage to the red eye from the raid wides?
Like in farm or speed or something?
No, in pro.
The thing is that the red eye doesn't take twice as much damage because the other one's coming from the blue eye, so it's actually healing it.
No, because it's double the raid damage on the party, so you get double the damage to the red eye from the hits.
Yeah, it is double.
No, because are you sure? Because one of them comes from the red eye, and the damage from the red eye. Oh, never mind. I'm thinking about this incorrectly. You're right, because it's based on the tethers, not the eyes.
Right.
Yes.
That takes a lot of mitigation.
But no, wouldn't you lose the value though? Because then the blue eye would heal double.
The blue eye barely heals though.
Blue eye heals.
But he's getting 2
one.
instances.
One raid wide.
There's 2 raid wides.
One raid wide is about 0.5% or 1% ish on the blue eye, and it's like 2 to 3% on the red eye. So it's actually a pretty big gain overall.
Okay.
Yeah, have you ever seen like if you look at like the blue eye after it revives, that's how much it gets even when it's like alive before that.
I may or may not know of a group that does do this strat, and apparently you can get away with it with just reprisals on both eyes, Heart of Light, and a souped up deploy. And
I think it's all right.
Very interesting.
Because you don't need. It just depends how many cooldowns you can spare. Like move from the rewind to there, right?
Mhm.
And you don't need
You don't
probably all those cooldowns on the rewind.
Yeah, you're sitting there spamming sucker anyway.
So, yeah, I think it would be fine to just move extra cooldowns there.
I just thought it was an interesting idea because like a lot of times you'll wipe because there's just not enough damage to kill the eye before the steeps.
That
And
is
if you could pull an
interesting.
extra 2% from a calculated mit, I was wondering if that would be. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth, because I mean you could just as easily wipe to missing one piece of that mitigation, right? So
Yeah.
just thought I'd throw that out there.
I think that'd
It
be like,
does quite a bit of damage.
yeah, that'd be
but-
like a recovery strat.
It
I
just
think.
depends how many extra cooldowns you have. If you're chilling on a bunch of cooldowns, I don't see why not. But if you aren't, then that seems risky.
Well, you would need the cooldowns for the next phase, right? Like you want 2 minutes, or at least 2 minute mitigation, or whatever mitigation you have, AoE mitigation you have up for the harsh font phase, right? So
That's,
Yeah.
that's
I
what
call-
I mean. It just depends how many cooldowns you can comfortably move off of that without like severely griefing your healers there.
Yeah, like I said, I think I only think you're really eating is Heart of Light or one of the tank mids, like Heart of Light or Missionary or something like that, and then just all the deploy things, the healing buffs for deploys. That's it.
all right, we are coming up almost at 3 hours. I'm not sure.
2.5.
2.5. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I don't know if anybody is has any other plans, but I don't know how much longer we want to keep you guys here.
By the
We
way, that
have
was
too much
kinda,
left to go over at this point.
I just wanted to follow. Sorry, I wanted to say at least once.
Hey, go ahead.
Sorry, I disagree with that strat. I was just throwing it out there because one of my friends really.
Oh, okay.
got it.
Oh, okay.
I think it's
Once on the record, I shouldn't. Don't do
All right,
that.
that was
I think
absolutely
it's
awful.
extremely risky.
I thought this
Yeah.
was like you suggested it during prog, and you're like upset you got
No,
shut down or
no,
something.
absolutely
I was
not.
like, damn.
I'm
It's
like,
not the
nah,
worst thing
don't.
I've ever heard, but
It's
yeah, I
not,
don't know
like,
if I would do it.
Well, I'm
Alright.
just thinking like the horse hunt phase. Like I don't know how much you can take away from that because you do just sit there and spam sucker, right? It's very easy to and safe.
Yeah. Like just spam. I just alternate sucker idle, sucker idle, just until the phase is over.
Yeah, maybe it is just a recovery thing. You know, you go in with like two people. Why would you go in with two people with weakness? Actually, you probably fail mid-hog check. I don't know.
Also,
Yeah, if you're behind, you
Depends on
can
who.
feel like, yeah, let's eat both raid wides.
Yo, sometimes if I'm feeling spicy on Sir Sherbert, I dot him.
You got on at the start, right?
Yeah, I hit him like once sometimes. So I'm feeling saucy.
I DPS
like-
until the LB falls off.
Yeah, I'm DPSing until the first cone's hit, then I neutral aspected benefic Harshafont, and then just spam aspected Helios the entire phase.
Okay. Oh, there actually is one more question. Do you think the game would be more fun if they forced you to heal more often instead of just spamming your GCD?
Yes.
Like fights that are closer to like living liquid, or actually, question also brings up a very interesting point. The door boss in this fight. Door boss in this fight had a lot of healing, didn't it? Compared to I feel like most of the other fight outside the last phase.
It has a lot of tank damage.
Yeah. It did. And it had like the one buster that you can like invuln and like
I mean, holy is holy too. You have like the heavens fire, which is like a stack that needs mid to live. And then you have like the back-to-back cleaves on the 4 players plus the party, or the 4 other players. And right after that, you have the holiest of holy, which also does a lot of damage, and the knockback also wipes your shields, or wipes some of your shields too.
yeah.
So, and then right after that, you also have like the tank buster and into the fire chains into like another holiest of holy. So there's like a lot of healing there. Maybe not similar to living liquid, but you know, there's a lot more healing there than there is like in other phases in that fight for sure.
I definitely really love fights and phases where there's like very consistent damage throughout and not just one big hit like every 60 seconds. I think that's really boring.
I agree.
But when you have more consistent, like last phase as well as the door boss, those are both phases where there's just lots of consistent damage, and it validates more of every healer's toolkit, so they all feel like much more complete in that sense.
All right. It's a lot less like Scholar is just OP because the one thing this fight requires, Scholar does really well. It's just
Yeah.
you see the value in having Numa and like Panheima.
And those big hits are important for mitigation, right? But I just also think that there needs to be some chip damage on a frequent basis, like a 20 to 40 second interval, to really make a fight interesting to heal, at least.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. More heal checks for sure.
And yeah, that tank damage in that phase did not mess around either after basically after the knockback.
Got scarier autos than like the entire.
Because he had autos, man.
I was really
Those
hoping,
Autos
autos.
during a holiest of holy. It's really fucked up.
I was really hoping we'd get more phases like that in the rest of the fight, but yeah, it's just kind of over so quickly. I really enjoyed healing that first phase.
Okay. Looks like that was the last question. No more questions here. Is there anything we didn't talk about that we want to cover real quick?
Someone's in the chat to like delete Cure 1 and Free Cure a bit ago. And I agree a lot.
I think it's like a new
That's
player
a-
trap.
Cure 2 to
It's
replace Cure
huge
1.
new player trap.
If they're gonna keep Cure 1 in the game, they should just make it free MP itself, so that it's more like clear to new players what its niche is. Because Cure 1's niche is that you use it when you need to be healing, but you like have no mana to do anything else, right? So they should just make it free, so it's more clear that that's what it's for.
Be all right.
It's definitely still gonna like new trap a lot of people.
Yeah, for
just
sure.
by existing, but
Or you're gonna get people who are like, "I'm saving my MP for later," and never actually use it.
They'll still do it. It's again, you can't fix it. You
Yeah.
can't fix
I mean,
people
it
who
would-
do stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a little improvement, but yeah, you're right. Like it'll.
I didn't even
always
know it's
happen,
15%.
I think we talked about the mid versus healing check, right? Earlier in the show. We
Yeah.
touched upon that.
Yes, lots of mitigation, not enough throughput.
You guys you want like a balance, right, between the two? Like
Yeah,
you want
like
mitigation, but you also want pure healing. Would you sacrifice mitigation? Well, you'd have to. I guess you'd have to sacrifice mitigation to an extent. You'd need to use it for some of the throughput healing. In Square Enix's eyes, at least. But
Yeah.
would you take that sacrifice? Like maybe a little bit less mid checks. Still have mid checks, but a little bit less. Like more than T, like less than now, but more healing checks.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like pure healers didn't really get a chance to shine this tier
Mhm.
outside of like specific phases.
So I do have a thought, I guess, about like the LB gen during Death of the Heavens. I don't know. So like in our group, I was like pretty convinced that if you resolve the mechanic correctly, it'd like give you an LB3 to cast or LB the comets after.
Opium.
Because it like shoots up by like a dramatic amount, right?
Yeah, not enough though.
And that like LB2 that it basically just gives you for nothing that you don't need for anything for a long time. You just like kind of use it wherever. Like if you need to use it on comets or you need to use it on dragons. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just
Kind of weird.
I think it's just because you're technically falling into lethal there, probably, because they do a lot of damage. So, and you can't use debuff mid, so like you're guaranteed falling into lethal there.
No, it's definitely just like when someone cleanses a doom, it just shoots up for
Wait, really?
no reason. Yeah.
Yes, like it's way more than LBG. It's like Stormblood LBG's levels of like the amount it goes up.
If it was just one, if it was just a lethal damage hit on everyone, it would be like 1/3 of a bar. But it sounds like they're saying it's more than that.
I have to go back and check. That's actually
Yeah, if you
interesting.
look at a clip, you'll see it easily.
Towers do the same thing when you resolve those correctly. Like I always hear LB clicks there after meteors.
I don't remember. I think something else
I think
does.
so, yeah. I think Conviction Towers trigger like have a scripted trigger for LB, if I remember right.
Really?
I don't remember exactly though.
Okay. You think it's just there so people? Do you think they intended you to use LB on the meteors?
I'm not sure. I almost feel like it was like they weren't sure how to tune the meteors around different comps, or like it was like it was a case of what we were talking about before with the old kits versus the new kits, and they weren't exactly sure how to make it, so they just gave you the LB. It's like, if you want to use it for this, you can.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to like. It just stuck out to me as
It's
weird.
really cool if they intentionally gave you this like leeway to LB at your choice.
Mm-hmm. It's
Honestly,
definitely
the
weird.
rest of the fight feels like it's designed with leeway in mind. Again, it feels like the entire fight is designed around the worst possible things happening, and it's still
Yeah.
bearable. So obviously there's a limit to that because it's an ultimate. But in terms of just the way things, where you get knocked, what meteors you're next to, the layout, because that all affects how you approach meteor DPS. If you were to not use limit break, where everyone ends up is massive because you could end up wasting GCDs on them. So I think it's deliberate. I think they expected people would probably LB2 3 of those meteors.
Mm-hmm.
It could also just be like future proofing. Although I don't. There's no forced LB after that point, so I don't know what they would be like.
Yeah.
Doing it for.
I think it's probably why
I think it's deliberate too. Just because it's very clear with how much time this fight was in the oven, and like how much they clearly considered things on all the rest of the fight. Like they very clearly thought a lot about this fight when they were making it. So I would bet almost everything is deliberate.
It's very weird how they didn't have another like mid check, because now you potentially run into the same issue that UCOP had where you can use LB to cheese or recover mechanics. That's also probably why they made the final couple minutes of the fight, I would say, harder than your average ultimate. Like, I mean, you know, dragons onwards, I mean, that's a lot harder than like perfect onwards or like J-waves onwards, and I think ultimate probably did an exception, but I feel like UCAP was the same way. UCAP adds, I think, was like the highest tempo of the fight, but it wasn't like, it was one of those weird phases where it wasn't hard, but everything snowballed really fast if you messed up, or like you had the shakies.
I like
You're just
Kiona
not allowed to
adds
make a
lot.
mistake, that's all.
Yeah, I think the tempo cadence of like the final King Thoradin was really good. And it was very much, it felt more like ads than golden in a way. Just like the way you call it out and like approach it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Big fan of the non-tanks being involved in the auto attack mechanic also.
Me too.
Big fan.
I think the auto attacks is like one of the coolest parts. It's just very like flavorful. He's got 3 swords.
Everything he does is the 3 swords. It's great.
All right. I guess is that it? Is that it?
It's your show, man.
I don't know what else to talk about. It's my first time doing it. I don't know how to close
We're
the
done
show.
with the notes. Are we done with the show?
I guess so. What do we do from here, Mr. Happy? Hold my hand.
So okay, so I've been quiet mostly because you did a good job, Momo. You said
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
For anyone who wondered why I was
hey.
even here, it was just because Momo asked me to be. I was his wingman. That was it. So I'm glad I didn't have to do a whole lot this show. Momo, you did good. Don't be nervous next time.
Did great, man.
All right, no fuck you then. All right, that's fine. That's it. Won't accept the compliment. It's like, no, not done. Now is where you thank everyone for watching. You let everyone do their outros, and you shout out anything that you want to. But you go last because you're the main host. That's how it has to be.
All right. I guess starting with Narrlocke, going the same way. Do your shout outs, social medias, all that good stuff.
Thanks for watching. My Twitter is Narrlocke, and my Twitch is Narrlocke, and my YouTube is Narrlocke. It's spelled exactly the same way
your character
as it is
name?
on the screen. My character name is Narrlocke, but with a space in the middle because they wouldn't let me make it.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were gonna say, "And I'm gay," like you did in
And
the
I'm gay,
intro.
yeah.
There you go. There it is.
Okay, Momo number 2.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for having me. My Twitter is MomoHime. It's like just MomoHime, but 2 O's each time it appears. Also, there's 4 O's in it. Yeah, Hime. I could like link it. Do you want me to?
Yeah, yeah, you can go ahead and link it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just put it in the chat.
Yeah, if you guys want to link your social media, Twitches, all that stuff.
I don't
for free.
post anything. I just retweet our clears when we get them, so it's nothing interesting. Sorry to disappoint. That's all. I don't really have anything else. My in-game name's MomoHime. I'm on Adamantoise. I guess if you want to find me, if I'm in game. But yeah, I'm not. That's about it. I'm not like a famous person with lots of. I don't stream on Twitch, so you won't find me there.
Are you sure? I get like a lot of people say that you stream on Twitch. Someone
He makes a lot of good videos.
Yeah, you make guides and stuff like FFXV Momo or something.
I was really expecting him to link that on Twitter when he was asked to do a shout out. Honestly, I didn't think he would, but I would have.
If you see me in game and it's MomoHime, don't call me Momo-sama. Maybe
yeah.
Don't ask if I'm his alt. I don't have.
That's what an alt would say.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all I got.
Okay.
I'm world second, not this other guy. Random Reddit
Jesus.
user.
I'm Walmart Momo.
Calling him out.
I'm Walmart Momo. Okay.
Okay, you go, Tulls.
Hello. Thanks for watching. Great job. Remember to thank our hosts. They did a great job too.
Thanks for coming on.
My Twitter is _some_body. It's really bad. I post the worst things. So there you go.
All right. Beautiful.
Thanks for having me.
Kyo, I think it's your turn.
Oh, is it my turn? Okay, hello. You can find me on, I think I'm twitter.com and /Kionu with underscores around it. It's also Kionu was taken, so that's what we got. I will put it in chat. I'm also twitch.tv/Kionu. Kionu. And yeah, thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
Are you next?
Yeah. And so I say thanks so much for having me. I'll just drop my Twitter in chat. But yeah, that was a great time. Really enjoyed talking about it.
Do you have a Twitch? I think I stream, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, I stream every now and then. My Twitter is usually just me retweeting art and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, my Twitch should be in the Twitter. I'll link that too as well. But yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming on. You guys brought in a lot of insight. I'm sure people in chat also loved hearing your thoughts. Mr. Happy, my co-host, petting a cat right now.
Yeah, Ivy's very needy because I've been busy all day. And oh god, you're shedding too.
You got anything? you got anything you want to say to the wonderful people here?
Everyone here is wonderful. That's what I was gonna say. You literally.
Oh, my bad.
How could you do this? No, it was good. I listen. I knew you'd handle it fine, and I wasn't gonna have to do much. So it was just a relaxed show with the occasional quip. Mr. Happy 1227. I don't heal almost ever, and when I do, people tell me not to. So I had no input. I had no input for the show, but it was a great show, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. And again, please praise Momo for hosting it and doing a good job. That's all I ask.
Thank you. Not very good at handling compliments, but I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for coming on again. You guys were wonderful. This is like the first time of me ever doing something like this, so definitely a little nervous.
I'm gonna shoutcast you off the air.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hey guys, thanks for coming to the Phase Temperance DSR Ultimate Healer interview. Thank you to our wonderful host Momo-sama, as well as his co-host Mr. Happy. Thank you to Narrlocke from Neverland, MomoHime and Tulslaeh from Ether Group 3, and Kyo and Ara from Thoughts for a Second for their thoughts and opinions. Thank